Yo, what's up? Welcome to PS I Love You XOXO episode 91. I'm one of your hosts, Blessing Adeoye Jr. Joining me is Gameonesis, aka Janet Garcia.
Yo, what is good?
Not much. I'm really digging the outfit. You got the Harley Quinn vibes going.
Yeah, Birds of Prey. It was my costume last year, so I figured I'd bring it back because there's literally nowhere else to wear this specific outfit.
Where exactly did you get? You got like all the caution tape all around you, just out there flowing. Where'd you get this? Did you buy this or did you make this?
Nah, I bought it. I got it at Spirit Halloween, actually. Except for the shorts I just bought as regular jean shorts, because I'm like, this can just be any jean short that I can then wear in real life as well. So, but the jacket and everything. And I love the costuming in Birds of Prey is so good. Like, I've always wanted to, and maybe one day eventually I will, but it's like, would be a pain to make and even worse to buy. But like, the outfit, like the suit she wears at the end of that movie, beautiful. Dream suit. So yeah, some real nice clothes there.
That movie doesn't get enough credit. Like the people that love it really love it, but I feel like there's a lot of people that still dismiss it as, oh, it's more Suicide Squad, it's whatever. And I'm like, no, Birds of Prey is genuinely a really good movie. That is probably one of my favorite DC movies. Now, probably behind the latest Suicide Squad.
I think that was
of the modern DC movies.
That was the last pre-pandemic movie I watched. So
fuck, that might be.
Is this the outfit that you're talking about?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, this one had no. For the suit at the end, it's like a blue suit where she's like driving in the car away. But that outfit's like her key outfit. Like the one I'm wearing is the one that she wears for the majority of the movie. Gotcha. I'd love to eventually like skate in this too because she like does derby roller skating. But
yeah, that'd be great.
Like
that sounds like great TikTok content.
Bless, do you not remember the last movie? Do you not remember the last movie you saw?
Oh, I bet it was Sonic.
Was it? No, it was My Hero Academia, wasn't it?
It was My Hero Academia, World Heroes, or not World Heroes Mission. That's the new one coming out. Two Heroes, I believe. Or no,
I had a great nap during that movie.
No, that was I forget what the second movie is called. Whichever one that was that came out at the beginning of 2020 in the U.S. Yeah, you took a big old nap in the middle of that one.
It was a good. That was one of those ones where I was just tired. I forget what time we saw it.
Falling asleep during.
Did we drink beforehand? We must have done something.
During a movie is like washed activities, and I relate to this so hard because I honestly was so tired for Endgame. I was like, this shit better pick up because I'm exhausted. Because I went like after work or like I think we did like the midnight thing or something. It reminds me of like the first time I felt like I'm getting washed was like it was a couple years ago. I went to see Kendrick Lamar during his To Be a Butterfly tour. And I went after work. I had just started teaching for like either the first year teaching or I was doing like student teaching or something. And I was so tired that I got to the venue and I'm like, y'all got any Red Bull? Like, I'm not here to drink. I'm here to try to be awake.
Okay. So when you say wash, you mean more so like old man activity as opposed to like lame person activity.
Oh yeah.
For me, I've hit the point where I look forward to sleeping in movies. This has been a thing throughout my 20s. You know,
if
like
you got AMC stubs, you might as well. Free bathrooms, free naps. Let's go.
I stand by that the two best naps I'll ever take are naps that I take on planes during flights, and then naps I take in the middle of watching movies. Because I've done it.
Planes.
My god, the plane flight hits so different. That's why I always get the window seat. I get the window seat so I can always just lean against the window, have that neck pillow.
I can never
does your neck not like break in half during that sleep? That's the thing for me. Bit. The plane sleep.
But I don't care.
That's why it's not. That's why it's inferior.
I'll find a way. Sleep finds a way for me. And so I slept during my Hero. I think when we went to see Hamilton when it came out on Disney Plus. I want to say I forget how I fell asleep my first time watching Hamilton as well.
But granted, Hamilton is also kind of lengthy. That is a lengthy one too.
It is a lengthy one. Endgame, the second time I saw it, because I saw it the first time, and there's no dream of me falling asleep, no pun intended, the first time watching Endgame, because my blood was rushing throughout that entire movie. I was into it. Second time, I went to watch it again in theater, specifically for the special release of it. Specifically for the nap. No, specifically for the release where they added in, I think, like one new scene and like a post.
There was like post stuff of like behind the scenes footage and like the different, like the alternate introduction of like Smart Hulk and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. Like Hulk, when he not fully edited, jumping out of a burning building, saving somebody. I went to see that one. and I took a great nap during that one as well. That was one where I didn't feel guilty about it because I'm like, I already know what's gonna happen in this movie, and this movie is long enough to where I made it about an hour and a half in. I made it to when they got to the battle. Spoilers for Avengers Endgame if somehow you avoided Avengers Endgame up till now. I made it to Battle of New York, which sounds early, but that is a long ass movie. That's probably like an
it's
hour
a really
and a
long
half.
movie.
That's an hour in because I feel like each act is like strictly like almost an hour. So yeah, that's like about an hour of the way in. The big thing for that special release, I remember, is that it gave us a teaser for Spider-Man Far From Home.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yes, it did. Yeah, it's one of the scenes that are in the beginning of that movie. Yeah. So I was in for it specifically for that, and so I woke up for that stuff. But aside from that, I was like, okay, guys, I'm gonna get one of the best naps I can get this year during this theater experience. Now, Janet, a thing we should mention is that it's just you and me and Barrett. Greg's not here, and somehow people are listening or watching, and they've somehow missed it. Greg just had a baby. Congratulations! Round of applause for Greg. I'm sure he's listening, so he's going to hear the round of applause. But what that means for us is that we get the rest of the year just to ourselves. We get to hang out, talk about PlayStation, make fun
I already
of Greg.
feel the chaos rising. Like
I'm looking forward to this. I don't know how you feel, but like
I'm excited.
Us being able to do PS Love You Gregless is going to be an experience. Right now, Barrett has brought up, if you're watching the video version, the picture of Greg and his beautiful baby boy, BJ Miller, Benjamin James Miller. And I love that this kid's name is BJ because that is that used to be my nickname growing up for Blessing Jr. Kids used to call me BJ. And so the fact that Greg and Jen decided to name their kid after me is such an honor.
I didn't know you were a BJ as well, Blessing, because I'm a BJ as well.
Are you now?
Barrett James, yeah.
Oh,
why is this so common? Like, this is a lot more common than I expected it to be.
No,
like when I first heard this is the abbreviation, I was like, oh, is that like a thing? And then everyone's like, oh, like everyone I know is BJ, and I'm like, why did no one lead with this?
Yeah, I guess BJ's win. I mean, BJ Blazkowicz. BJ's a fairly common one.
Everybody loves the BJ's restaurant, chain.
That's true. I don't know what it is about the BJ like abbreviation that people take to. It rolls off the tongue. There's something there. But again, that means that Greg being out means that it's me and you. We get to be chaotic. We get to, of course, bring the hot takes, bring the PlayStation content that people love. But also we get to bring a new vibe to PS Love You. And so I look forward, Janet, to doing the show with you for the next few months without Greg and figuring out what this dynamic looks like because it's gonna be different, but I think it's gonna be really good.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good one. I'm excited.
Hell yeah. Let's get into this. Remember that this is PS Love You XOXO, your PlayStation podcast. Each and every week, we join you to talk about the biggest topics in PlayStation. If you like that, you can watch it live right here as we record on patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames, or you can watch it on Tuesday when it posts for everyone on youtube.com/KindaFunnyGames, roosterteeth.com, and on podcast services around the globe by searching for Kinda Funny Game. No. Crap. See, this is the thing I gotta get used to. Is I'm so used to the KFGD intro, and I'm gonna mix it into the PSW intro. I gotta pivot. Remember, you can use Epic creator code Kinda Funny on all Epic in-store and Epic in-game purchases like Rocket League and Fortnite to help support the channel. Housekeeping for you. Like I said, it was a big baby weekend. Greg and Jen had their kid, but also Gear Witta had a baby. Go over to Twitter, wish him well, tell him congratulations, all that good stuff. Today's the day, the first episode of the Arkham Files, a Kinda Funny Games mini-series where Barrett looks back at what makes each of the Batman Arkham games so special. Premieres today on youtube.com/KindaFunnyGames. If you're listening to this on Tuesday or after, that means yesterday. It premiered Monday on youtube.com/KindaFunnyGames at 2:30 p.m. Pacific time. If you're watching this live right now, you can still go over there at that time to hang out with Barrett in chat and talk about what's going on in the premiere, have a good time, hang out with other Kinda Funny best friends. If you're watching this later, for sure, go back, double back, watch Barrett's Arkham video. Barrett, people should be hyped for that, correct?
Yeah, this has been a project, I think about a year in the making. I think Tim was the one who hit me up like a year ago and was trying to come up with fun ideas for the release of Gotham Knights before that had been delayed. And the idea that we'd come up with is like doing a kind of retrospective series on the Batman Arkham series since WB Games Montreal worked on one of the Arkham games. So yeah, wrote these scripts over the course of a few months, gathered all the footage, recorded everything. Little baby Rod Raj was the one who edited these, because I'm usually the one who edits like the big like Zelda in review and Assassin's Creed in review. But I wanted that like kind of premiere feel that I can't deliver in a video edit, and I know Roger Picorni can. So these are going to be really fun. This is going to be a really fun series to go through. Yeah, if you're watching this on Tuesday, Arkham Asylum premiered yesterday. For those wondering, and yeah, talking about how it's still a masterclass in design. And then the following Monday, this coming Monday, will be the premiere of Batman Arkham City, the second episode of the Arkham Files, and talking about how they switched the power dynamic to evolve the Batman Arkham series. Also on this coming Monday, because it's the 10-year anniversary of Batman Arkham City, Mike and I will also be playing through the entirety of Batman Arkham City over on twitch.tv/KindaFunnyGames. So that'll be a fun thing to come hang out, celebrate 10 years of Batman Arkham City, which most I think would consider one of the best superhero games of all time. So that'll be a fun one.
Bro, you just broke my brain saying that's the 10-year anniversary of Arkham City.
That's
crazy.
Monday will be the 10-year anniversary of Batman Arkham City and the 5-year anniversary for the Batman Return to Arkham remasters, which I found very interesting as well. Like I can't, which reminds me that tomorrow, or I guess the day that this episode is coming out publicly, will be my 5-year anniversary of being in the games industry. Because I remember like on my
only
first
5 years.
Congratulations.
Yeah, 5 years ago.
You've done a lot of stuff in that 5 years.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
I mean, I've done some things, but yeah, I remember like my first
modest.
week. I remember Lucy O'Brien was in the US IGN office, and she was reviewing the Batman Return to Arkham collection, and that was like one of my first projects, was making the graphics comparison for those remasters. So yeah, that's fucking wild to think about.
Well, congratulations, Barrett. Congratulations, Bruce Wayne. And congratulations, Batman. One day we'll learn your identity. If that's not enough kind of funny feature content for you, The Blessing Show returns this week as a YouTube premiere. You can tune in on Thursday at 9 a.m. Pacific time on youtube.com/kindoffunnygames as we break down what's up in a very loopy episode. And then Tuesday, if you're listening to this on Tuesday at 11 a.m. Right after Kind of Funny Games Daily on twitch.tv/kindoffunnygames, we are partnering with NVIDIA GeForce as Andy, Mike, and Nick will be playing some of that Back for Blood, showing off DLSS and all that dope RTX tech. So tune in for that. Thank you to our Patreon producers, Pranksy, Tyler Ross, Delaney Twinning, Julian the Gluten-Free Gamer, Alex J. Sandoval, Techie Haas, James Hastings, and Casey Andrew. Today we're brought to you by Upstart, Honey, and Chime, but we'll tell you about that later. For now, let's begin with topic of the show. Now, Janet, this topic of the show, in this whole episode is going to be kind of the part 2 to the part 1 of our Kind of Funny Games Daily episode that me and you did on Friday, because Friday was, weirdly enough, kind of kind of a bigger PlayStation news day, and we talked a lot about the Christmas remake that PlayStation is seemingly going to announce. We talked about the Jade Raymond stuff, and that's going to be PlayStation updates. But even more than that, I feel like the last couple of weeks even, have been kind of a nostalgic couple of weeks for PlayStation news, if that makes sense. And so we have things like we had the PS3 and Vita stores news. They're going to be dropping credit card support, right? Which is like nostalgic is an interesting word for it, but mostly, you know, that is alluding to the fact that we're moving on. Like those stores are getting more and more, I guess closed is the word I'm looking for, by the second, right? Like those were officially supposed to close, but with them taking away card support, right? Like that's another step in us moving forward. We had the GTA Trilogy remaster announcements from Rockstar, which is exciting. Sora coming to Smash, which I know doesn't feel like PlayStation news, but Kingdom Hearts, big PlayStation franchise historically, and so that counts as PlayStation nostalgia, I'm gonna say. And then we had the news that PlayStation can announce a big remake this Christmas, and that's where I want to center on.
Yes.
If I could sing, I'll echo that, but I'm not even gonna try. My voice would crack so bad, especially right now because my voice is kind of in a weird place, a little bit of a sore throat. But I digress. I want to focus on that Christmas remake thing. I'm going to recap the story, and I want to ask the question, which PlayStation games deserve a remake, Janet? I need you to internalize that question, think about it, and I'm going to read through the story. I'm going to pull from Chris Scullion at Video Games Chronicle, who wrote this. PlayStation is set to announce a remake of a big game this Christmas, according to a musician who claims to be involved with its soundtrack. Folk singer Eva McMahon, who now performs as Ava, told Irish radio station WLR-FM's Lunchbox show on Thursday that she had recorded an Irish language theme for the game, which is yet to be revealed. Quote, I just recently wrote a song for a PlayStation game with Michael McGlynn, McMahon said. She continues, that actually happened about a year and a half ago. It was just as the pandemic hit. Michael got in touch and just said, listen, we're writing music for a remake of a PlayStation game. And he does that a lot. He's done a lot of writing for different games that are very well known, but I'm actually not a gamer myself. So he said, look, it's an Irish language piece that they're looking for. So really what I was involved with was the lyric writing in the Irish language. It's actually going to be announced at Christmas, the name of the game. I've heard of it now, and I've had it confirmed. It is a big game, which is great. So it's going to be an Irish language piece in that game, which is brilliant. End quote. It's possible that the game may be Xenogears, the Square Enix game originally released on PlayStation in 1998. Yasunori Mitsuda, a composer who worked on the Chrono, Xeno, and Shadow Hearts franchises, tweeted a photo last week of McGlynn and his daughter preparing to perform music remotely. It is also possible, however, that McGlynn has been involved in numerous projects and that this tweet is unrelated to the PlayStation remake. Again, in our part one of this whole conversation that we're going to have throughout this first half of PS Love You, we talked about, is this Xenogears? Is this something else? And it's really kind of hard to narrow down what this could be. All we know is that this person says that it's big. And even them saying it's big, I'm kind of like, all right, when you say it's big, is it a big game according to X person who you talk to who might say that that might consider Xenogears big, which Xenogears, to be fair, for many people is big, or is it legitimately a big PlayStation game? It is kind of hard to nail all that down. So I'm not going to ask the question, Janet, of what it is. I'm going to ask the question of what should it be? What PlayStation games deserve a remake? Janet Garcia.
Well, taking out the fact that, I guess this specific story, because I know when we were talking about it for KFGD, it was a lot of it's Irish language songs. So what franchise has or would have or could have an Irish language song in it? So I think putting that stuff aside, for me, I'm going to throw Sly Cooper out there just because there's been a lot of fanfare around it. And I booted that up via PlayStation Now. That's right. I'm about it. Y'all thought that I was just talking that stuff last episode. I have PlayStation Now. And while we were I don't know, we were setting something else up. And I'm like, well, just jump into a PlayStation Now game because that's the convenience, right? I don't have to download anything. And after it said that my internet was not powerful enough to run it, and I said, check again, then I was in Sly Cooper. And when I tell you I was having the time of my life playing this game. It was, obviously I laid it on thick a bit, but it's honestly the most fun I've had with the game in a while. And that's not to the detriment of a lot of the other games I've played. Y'all know, I love Deathloop, I loved Kena, but there's something that was so joyous about the simplicity of what they're sort of pitching with that. Something so innovative about just really picking a good character and a good world to construct fun traversal and fun platforming in. That being said, it definitely was an older game, and you could feel that with stuff like how precise you had to be with like picking up the coins or certain items, and how petty it is that you have essentially like 1 to 2 hits at least out the gate for Sly. Like Sly is, I was tweeting about this and a lot of people were responding to me, and someone said, yeah, Sly Cooper is made of glass, like, which maybe makes sense because he's like a nimble thief, but like, if you breathe too close to him, he will pass out. So there definitely were things that I could already see could use a revamp and it could benefit from. And I think that's the perfect spot for a remake. I think, unfortunately, a lot of times, but the thing with remakes is it's always a game that was already kind of good. Like you're rarely remaking a game that was sort of middling. I think a remake like, Medieval was a little bit more rare of like a cult classic kind of remake. But for the most part, it's like popular IP that was always good. Now it's back and maybe it's a little better. Maybe it only looks nicer. But I think Sly is a great one for that because not only does it have the, I think, IP power, is it beloved, but also I think it really could benefit from a little bit of a repolish mechanically. So that's the first one I want to throw out there.
So on Twitter this morning, I reached out to folks and I told people to write in with their suggestions on games that deserved a remake on PlayStation. And people showed up. Like, I've never seen the KindaFunny PS Love You inbox filled to this extent of people writing in. A lot of people have a lot of things to say about PlayStation remakes, and I'm gonna pull a lot of the audience submissions. But jumping off of Sly Cooper, I think you can make an argument for plenty of the PS2 era platformers, because I think that and like even PS1 era platformers as well. But for the major ones there, both Spyro and Crash Bandicoot have both gotten remakes, and so I feel like moving on from those, I think the natural course would be to get into the PS2 era main platformers, and of course, Ratchet and Clank has gotten a remake. I think Sly Cooper is next in line alongside Lord of Pwn writes in as Jack and Daxter. Lord of Pwn says, and Lord of Pwn writes into patreon.com, so it's kind of funny games like you can, and says, the Jack and Daxter series deserves a remake. Whether it's bringing the games with enhanced visuals to PS5, akin to the recent Crash and Spyro games, or doing a full-on reboot. Imagine seeing a densely packed Haven City with weather effects and driving in a zoomer with spatial audio. Sublime. Hell, even just being able to quickly jump to a city challenge or having a friends leaderboard for the jet board challenges or races would be amazing. So please, PlayStation, bring back the Jack and Daxter games. And I know both you, Janet, and Barrett Courtney, I believe, are big fans of the Jack and Daxter franchises, and I'm sure you have a lot to say about these ones.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would love I'd love anything from Jack and Daxter at this point. I would take anything that would give me. I'll buy an ugly statue. I'll buy a poorly made T-shirt. I don't really care at this point. I love that franchise so much, and I think my only pushback on a remake actually is just that I think they actually do hold up incredibly well. So I mean, while I think especially what Lord of Pwn writes in to say, like, the idea of spatial audio and like weather effects, like that would be really awesome. But at the same time, there's like also more basic things I think could use, like driving that doesn't feel terrible, an escort mission that isn't hell. Like, I think there's a much more baseline way that they can make improvements on that game. So yeah, I would be excited for it. I think there's plenty of potential for it, especially for 2 and 3, which I would argue are the ones that are more clearly weak in some places. Jack 2 is still my favorite of that franchise. It's still my favorite game ever, but I think Jack and Daxter remaking that, I don't see too many big gameplay improvements, while Jack 2 and Jack 3, the driving, man, there's plenty of room for improvement there. I will say, having played, just played Sly Cooper and having played like other platformers of that ilk, of that era, it's so wild how much better Jack and Daxter is than so many of these other IPs, and that it came out in the same era. It just blows my mind how good this game actually was. So definitely, if you haven't played it in a while, I recommend you replay it, because it holds up incredibly well. But yeah, I think they definitely could do plenty with it. It's just one of the ones that I think has aged better than some of the others.
Yeah, I like what Lord of Pwn mentions in terms of the quality of life stuff, right? Like being able to fast travel easier. And now when I think of bringing games forward, I often think of that in the context of PS5 improvements and what can the PS5 bring. And something as simple as quick load screens has changed my experience so much in games in ways that feel subtle, but then when I go back to other platforms or try other games that don't have that feature, I notice way more. Like, I'm playing Metroid Dread right now, and I love Metroid Dread.
I was literally thinking of the same thing.
And like I die in that game, and I have to wait for a loading screen. I'm like, oh yeah, loading screens. I forgot about.
Yeah, man.
I forgot
the power
how
of
long
the SSD cannot be overstated. They, as much as they try to overstate the power of the SSD, I mean, yeah, it is. That's probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite, current gen or next gen feature, even though it's so basic, but it just changes everything, and it makes it so much easier to stay immersed in the game. I know people will, react and be like, well, just don't have such a short attention span. But like, look, man, if you give me time to check Twitter, I'm gonna check it. You can argue that's a flaw that I have, and I'm not gonna fight you on it. But when I have like quick load screens, like I'm there and I'm in, I'm just continuously going. And that ease of use has been such a blast.
Yeah, and I remember the first time playing Miles Morales, and I have a love-hate relationship with the cards on PlayStation, because I think half the time I'm like, I don't care about what these cards have to say. But then there are other times where in Miles Morales you can go through the activities and it'll bring up quests or missions that you have unlocked in Spider-Man Miles Morales, and if you click it, boom, you fast travel right to it, and it is such an easy, quick thing. And having that has been so good in games like that, and for something like a Jack and Daxter, or in even 3D platformers in general that are more open, where you can hop to this world or hop to this setting, right? Having that kind of quickness to it, I think it could be so awesome and so good. And so yeah, I totally think whether it is a base remaster, right, or like even a remake, even though you say like you don't feel like it needs a full remake, either way I would like to see those kind of things implemented, because that's my shit right there. I love that shit. To bring up one, I have like a whole short list that I put together, which, a lot of it is PlayStation 2 heavy because PlayStation 2 is just my generation. I love PS2. But the one PS1 game, actually, I guess I have multiple now that I'm looking at this, but my biggest pull for a PS1 game, and I feel like it's the obvious one that everybody's always asking for, is Metal Gear Solid, the one from 1998. And like, that's one that we've now had more rumors in terms of Konami bringing back Metal Gear Solid. We have the rumor of Virtuous bringing back MGS3, which is my favorite Metal Gear Solid, and I would love to see that one brought back specifically. But just in general, Metal Gear Solid 1, I think would be such a good one to go back and reinterpret it. We've had it once before with Metal Gear Twin Snakes, and at this point, that game is now old because that game came out like 6 years after the original Metal Gear Solid, and so like I think there's so much you can do with bringing that one back. Oh yeah, Barrett brought up like the perfect cutscene of like Revolver Ocelot spinning around the thing, and then
remember when they didn't have eyes?
Yeah, where their heads are just like involuntarily shaking to like because there's no facial animation.
Speaking,
so it's just like.
I mean, still impressive for a PS1 game. Honestly.
Yes, at the time, like, I mean, you mentioned Metal Gear, like the first one, and like my starting point with Metal Gear is like MGS2, and I tell the story all the time where I remember playing that when it came out, and literally being like, oh my god, it looks like a movie, which I don't know why I said that because I had seen movies before and they looked a lot better than MGS2, but something about like the fidelity of it at the time, and like I think it'd be so cool in terms of what you bring up with the Metal Gear Solid remake, if they could kind of almost recapture that wow factor. Because again, when I played those games, I had never seen anything that beautiful or that realistic, which again, it looks silly now if you look back at it.
I mean, but I think so much of it is cinematic presentation. So much of it is how you angle the cameras and how you let a scene settle and how you let the characters perform and all that stuff. Like that, I would say that was unlike anything else in terms of what video games are doing in cutscenes and all that.
Yeah, but I would love a remake of that because I actually either never played Metal Gear Solid, the first one, or like the memory is highly fleeting at this point. And I do think that really could benefit from some mechanical tweaks as well. So I think that's a good one. Yeah.
And talking about the cinematic presentation, I think so much of that has to do with Hideo Kojima as a director and his team specifically that, I would love to see these games remade. Like give me Metal Gear Solid 1 through 3 remade. But I get that tinge of nervousness knowing that this is being made by Virtuous and Hideo Kojima isn't involved, or at least theoretically isn't involved because we had no confirmation, but you assume that he's not involved. That makes me nervous because I'm like, are they going to capture the same cinematic presentation? Are they going to capture the same moments? Are they going to capture that same level of Kojima weirdness and Kojima detail that we come to know and love these games for? That's always the thing that makes me go, oh man, I wish somehow PlayStation would license these out and give them to Kojima Productions, but at the same time, you understand that Kojima probably doesn't want to work on these games anymore, and he's probably just like, leave me alone, like don't bother me. Let me work on my Death Stranding 2 or whatever weird game I want to make, which is also very fair.
He had his one bout of weird art, and now it's time for new weird art, and I can respect that, even if the results are mixed.
Mm-hmm. Janet, do you have any other games that deserve a remake on PlayStation?
Yeah, I was thinking of this, and Tomba is one, which I feel like I'm just really showing who I am here when it comes to these older games where I'm like, look, I'm platforming, and that's it. Like, that's what I grew up on. That's my bread and butter. So Tomba, it was a platform like adventure game back in the like late 90s. I think it had a PS1 release and then like a PS2 or 3 release. And I remember this was like one of my earliest gaming memories was playing this game, specifically at my cousin's house. Like he had Tomba and he was like really good at it. And he was pro gamer before I like had that as a concept in my mind. And I had so much fun playing that game at the time. And I just thought it had like a really unique like set of characters. Like I was obsessed with like the pigs in that game. And I just think that would be a really great one in terms of, again, one that is fun, but also could really benefit from some polish. I always think that's a little bit of like a more fun angle for a remake. Cause again, it's there's the obvious answers of the games that were always good and are still kind of good, but I feel like Tomba really could benefit from getting those improvements and everything. As you can see, it looks kind of a little bit janky, but I love that game so much playing it as a kid.
I love that. pulling more from the audience submissions, a few people wrote in with Siphon Filter. I'm going to start with Travis Cook, who writes, Siphon Filter. We haven't had a AAA stealth game in a minute. Plus, we need anything that will make people throw some respect on Sony Ben's name. Sony doesn't need Konami. They'll do cinematic stealth themselves. And then James Davis writes in also and says, I think it's finally time for a Siphon Filter remake. The last game was in 2007, and I'm so surprised the game hasn't had a return in any way since then. Would be cool to remake the first PS1 game as a third-person shooter / stealth game with today's sensibilities, maybe like Metal Gear Solid 5. And I like the idea of it. I like the idea of taking just the pure premise of just like stealth action with like this cinematic, almost like a Mission Impossible vibe, and translating it to today. Because I think that's the thing that's always difficult when it comes to remakes is how much of the original do you want to keep, and then how much do you want to modernize and bring it forward. And I mean, both stealth games have come a long way since 2007, or even since like the early 2000s when you fuck, what year did Siphon Filter even come out? Because now I'm like, was it late 90s? It must have been early 2000s, right? I'm gonna fact check myself on that in a second. But stealth has come forward so much, action games have come forward so much, and then also shooters have come forward so much.
1999 was the first Siphon
Damn.
Filter.
What a year.
Holy cow. What a year. But yeah, I would love to see what that looks like today. I think if you were to bring back Siphon Filter, I think you would Metal Gear Solidize it. I think you would try to fill in that void because there isn't Metal Gear Solid currently. And you can make it, if you wanted to go for it, you could make it that MGS5 open world. You are going on missions repeatedly. I mean, I would even throw Deathloop in there too. You're coming back to the same environments, even if it is 3 or 4 maps or 5 maps. You're coming back to the same places, infiltrating them in different ways. And you'd have it be more on the, I guess, like Mission Impossible-ish kind of vibe to it. I think there's a lot there that you can do. But also to Travis Cook, right? Like we haven't had a AAA stealth game. I'm gonna push back on that a little bit because we have had, like, Hitman 3 was just this year, and then also we just got Deathloop, and Arcane's been doing their thing as well. We've had them, but I think they've just been a bit few and far between. But there are ones that you can take lessons from that I think would feed well into a Siphon Filter.
Yeah, well, to me, when you like made that comment, like, of course, there's always going to be examples of games from like every genre, but it's more like because it's a little bit more of like a niche angle. Like, plenty of games have stealth in them, like incorporate stealth elements. How many games marketing is, hey, you can go in loud or you can go in stealthy? It's like, yeah, that's every game. That's almost every action game. But so few have it with like a heavy emphasis and focus, like the way like Hitman has it, like the way Metal Gear had it. I think too, Siphon Filter would be interesting. And for background, like I have not played the original Siphon Filter, but in the context of its relationship with Days Gone, I think that could be interesting. Though, of course, it gets kind of weird because like we know there's not going to be like a Days Gone 2 like that got shelved or never made it to like production. But I think that would be fun in the sense that we just saw sort of those similar type tie-ins with Control, where like Control came out, then it had its like DLC and like the Alan Wake tie-in with the DLC, and then eventually we got that Alan Wake. I guess it would be a remaster, right? It wasn't, or a remake because it had different. Yeah, like it had maybe different assets or whatever, but yeah, a remaster. So I think that would be fun. But then it's like, how interesting is that tie-in after the fact of Days Gone kind of coming and going and not really like leaving that long of an or that big of an impact? But I think that'd be fun from like that perspective, just sort of tying everything together in a convenient package for people.
Now, I mentioned earlier that I have a short list, and I'm gonna be honest. I know that I'm a predictable person. I know there are games that people know I'm going to say and that people are expecting me to say. And so for this next game, I'm going to let Scoompoof here say it. Scoompoof writes into patreon.com/KindaFunny and says, my answer is always the same, but I would have to go with Dark Cloud, or preferably Dark Cloud 2. The game features procedural dungeon crawling, an interesting story, and very fun town building sections. I could go on forever about it, but it seems like something that would really hit nowadays. And then Tyler also writes into patreon.com/KindaFunny and says, I will shout it from the rooftops until my lungs give out. Dark Cloud. Blessing is not alone. The game is begging for a remake, and I'm tired of pretending it's not. Give it the Ratchet & Clank reboot treatment. Stick to the idea of the original game, but feel free to carve your own path through the story without having to be a copy. Just be about an unlikely hero being granted the ability to rebuild his broken home, and then the world. A more modern take on the town rebuilding could be really fun. The combat hasn't aged super well, but I love the upgrade system for the weapons. The different party members were really fun to play around with as well. And my God, the voice acting. It was nice that the second game had it, but the first game's story was so much more interesting and pretty dark by the end. Didn't care much for the sequel personally. I don't need to ramble more. It's a simple concept with potential. Love this game. It will always have an important place in my heart. I'll also shout out the PS4 port of the original game. Plays well in my experience, and a fairly easy platinum. Anyway, you two are killing it. Also, congrats, Greg and Gary, as well as their respective misses. And Tyler and Scoom Poof, you guys are on point. Bring back Dark Cloud, remake it. I stand by it. I think it is such a missed opportunity that Dark Cloud isn't being brought back in some way, shape, or form.
We need a counter on this show of like days without Blessing mentioning Dark Cloud, because the counter is 0. We don't even need the counter, just a number displayed on the screen.
I got a good 5 games that I will always continue, like 5 obscure games that I'll always continue to shout out from the rooftop. It's Dark Cloud, it's Jet Force Gemini, it's Donkey Kong 64. I'm sure they're
like of that list, the obscure one is like maybe Dark Cloud. Like everyone knows Donkey Kong 64. It's infamous.
Yeah,
it may not be loved.
I was gonna say not like, people aren't being mean buried about it. People aren't shouting out how dope.
Here's the thing, though.
No, they're being the opposite, where they say that they've always hated it, which I feel like will only happen in the recent years. Only happened recently.
It is suffering from that what is it, like Nickelback syndrome, where it's like it's hated, but like how many of y'all actually took the time?
It reviewed well when it came out. Like people were enjoying it.
I mean, the Medium reviewed well when it came out. I'm like, I don't know what those people were on, but they played a different game than me.
Why does the Medium always get straight shots on this podcast?
Because it was like the first game of the year that I played. It was I feel
like that's your Dark Cloud. Medium, like the Medium is doing, the Medium developers are just chilling, doing nothing. They're like, oh, let's listen to a PlayStation podcast. And then 20 minutes in, they're like, what the fuck did we do? How did we get a part of this?
Yeah, they shouldn't have pulled up on the PlayStation platform, because now it's even more relevant. You know what I mean? Like it just happens.
Now we can talk about it.
Yes, exactly. Now it is technically a game that can be discussed. But yeah, I mean a little bit. But I do think I would like a Dark Cloud remake, in the sense that you already know my relationship with Dark Cloud, my strange history of randomly buying it and then not being able to progress because I didn't know what I was doing. Was it because it was hard? Was it because it was bugged? Was it because I was a child? It's probably a little bit of all three. I don't really know, but you speak so highly of it, and that was one of the niche ones that at least caught our eye. Like we got it for a reason, I'm imagining. So yeah, it'd be cool to be able to like re-experience that. I think for me too, with this whole conversation, like I've slowly warmed to remakes as a concept. Y'all know I'm still always going to be team something new. Something new that's bad. I don't even care. I'm like, I just want to see people try to push and innovate and create design that hasn't been done before. But that being said, I will say the big benefit that I felt with remakes in the last few years is it's further incentivized it's expedited me returning to those franchises. So something like Resident Evil 2 remake, when that dropped, like I always heard Resident Evil 2 was great. Everyone always talks about it so fondly. But I'll be honest, I don't know when I would have gotten around to playing Resident Evil 2. It probably wouldn't have even happened yet.
The original?
But because the remake, the original. Yeah. But because the remake came out, I was like, okay, now it's modern. Now it's relevant to like current, conversations, especially in terms of like our line of work. So I think that's sort of where I've grown to enjoy them a little bit more. Yes.
Yeah, and I think, there's always the thing of, if you go back in 2021 to play Resident Evil 2, you're not going to have as good of a time as somebody who was playing it at the time, because, like, spoiler alert, like, games age. And so, and I get plenty of people that will be upset because of the way I talk about Resident Evil 4, and I'll say that it hasn't aged well. But I say that with the idea of, hey, if they remade Resident Evil 4, I'll be totally into that. I'll play the hell out of that.
Is it the controls?
It's the controls. It's the controls for me.
I don't remember if it's tank.
It is tank controls. It controls weird. And playing, and I mean, I've always kind of had these thoughts even at the time. I had Resident Evil 4 when I was young, and I just couldn't get into it then either. But I swear, if they remade that game and modernized it a bit, I'm sure that could end up being one of my favorite Resident Evil games, because I know how much I love Resident Evil 2 Remake, and I know how much I enjoy Resident Evil 7, and I like Resident Evil 8 as well. Like, I think there's something to be said about bringing old things forward, because like new audiences, it can be so hard to try and get into something that is held back by the platform, or held back by even just the times. Like, game standards change, what people come to expect from playing games change, and having to reconfigure your brain to play a game that may be released in 98 or 99 isn't always the easiest thing to do. And so I think that is probably for me the big value of remakes. But like, to piggyback off of that and also talk about Dark Cloud, I do like what Tyler mentions here about not even sticking to the original, like stick to the original idea, but like change it up. You don't have to carry the same story. I don't think the story was the thing that made Dark Cloud dope. I think the thing that I keep pointing to for Dark Cloud, and also I remember the other game, the Red Faction is also in the list of games I'll continue to shout out. They're relatively obscure. The thing about Dark Cloud that I think would work so well is the fact that it is just Animal Crossing plus a roguelite. And I think there is so much.
I was like, that's one thing I'm really into, and then one thing that I'm really scared of.
But I think the thing you can do with Dark Cloud is make it just very casual on the roguelite side, because on the the premise of the game is you are this I was gonna say kid, but I don't even know if canonically you're a kid or not. He looks like a kid. You're this character who's the hero, and you are like, your village is gone, and you're basically tasked with going into the cave, which is a dungeon, and going through floors and collecting pieces of the town that like just appear as orbs in the dungeon, and you take them, and like in one of the orbs might be a house, and another orb might be a character, and in another orb might be a river, and you're finding these pieces in the dungeon to then recreate your town. And you can build it like in Animal Crossing, how you can build the town however you want. You do the same thing in Dark Cloud, where you can organize the town in whatever way. The characters in the town have preferences for how they like the town built. Like Freddy, I'm just gonna say Freddy likes his house by the river because he's a fisherman, and so you can find a way to place his house near the river. Wanda, Wanda might actually be a character in Dark Cloud. Wanda likes to be near the clock tower because she likes to hear the
she
clock
likes to
tower
know
bell.
what time it is.
She likes to know what time it is. She's
Very
a big fan of
punctual.
time.
Shout out! I forget who it was in the live chat here, but someone shouted out Ni no Kuni 2, which is like, it doesn't have the roguelite aspects, but a lot of that game, the premise of that game is like rebuilding your kingdom, which is really fun. And yeah, shout out to Ni no Kuni 2 one time.
Yeah, and I should play more Ni no Kuni 2.
It's
But
on
yeah,
Switch.
I think
Play it
it
on
is
that
on
OLED.
Switch.
Yeah,
I mean, this is a PlayStation podcast, so I think it might have it on PlayStation. I forget.
yeah. It originally came to PlayStation.
But yeah, like you have that stuff, but then I think the roguelite stuff is interesting as well, because I will say it was a little bit on the hardcore side of, you had not only your health, which like you're pretty feeble in that game, and then also it had weapon degradation, but then also it had a thirst system where if you go too long without water,
This sounds so punishing, Bless.
It
Like,
is-
this
it's very punishing.
brutal. No
but-
wonder my childlike self was like, "This is too much." Well, I couldn't get out of the first area, but like, this is a lot. This is a lot.com.
It was a lot, but I think fits well in terms of like the survival game wave that we've had with games, and the roguelite wave. I think Dark Cloud, weirdly enough, a lot of those elements I think align with a lot of where games have come to, especially in terms of like smaller indie games and like the kind of games you see like indie developers put out. I think Dark Cloud has a lot of those elements
the
already
thing I'll
there
ask
centralized and would be interesting.
Of the games that because you mentioned Dark Cloud, you mentioned Metal Gear. Of the games you've listed so far, do you recommend I play them in the modern era, or anyone play them in the modern era without the remake, right? Like, because right now none of these games are remade.
Metal Gear Solid, yes.
Okay.
Dark Cloud, if it sounds interesting, because it is on PS4.
I'm so curious.
Through PS2 to PS4, it is on there, and like it does have trophies. And I will say, like, I've gone back to play it within the last few years, and I still have fun with it. But it is an old game, and also I feel like I oversell it a lot. It's not the best game ever by any means. It is not even like one of my favorite games of all time by any means. It's just a game that I like a lot that I'm surprised hasn't come back. And I think it's worth, if the premise that I've described sounds interesting, I think there is enough there that anybody listening would enjoy, if that sounds like a fun premise. If not, then I'm like, stay away. Just wait for them to maybe eventually bring it back. That's kind of where I stand with it.
Yeah, I'm pretty similar with mine, except for Tuba. Tuba probably just don't even touch that, because I feel like it was not even that great at the time, but like I think it had some really fun ideas. And in general, I think those kind of platformers and adventure games had like so much personality to them. And I saw this a lot with like when you tweet this out and we're like, oh, go to Patreon. Like I was sifting through the replies, and there was a lot of people dropping platformers, like goofy mascot platformers with the classic naming convention of like kind of like that Banjo-Kazooie style, where I think one of the ones someone recommended was like Cookie and Cream. I don't know if that one's actually good, but I'm like, what is this? Like, there's so many weirdo platformers from that era, and I would like love to see more of those make a return, but with like much more polished mechanics.
Yeah, bring back Sonic Heroes.
Or like not.
What else you got for me?
I added, and I saw you had some, Resident Evil stuff on yours. RE1 is one I talk about a lot because I did play that at the time, and it's already been remade to a degree. Like I played it on the GameCube, and it's the tank controls. Like, and I know you mentioned it with 4 as well, but like I actually did play a little bit of 4 for the first time like a year ago. I played on the Switch, but same general concept. And I get what you're saying, but I felt like it was enough. Like it had enough going for it, movement wise. And I do think for the most part, even with like tank controls, it's rough, but also the game is designed around it. So it's not like you're using tank controls with like modern speed. Like everything's kind of slowed down anyway. But I think with RE1 specifically, and especially with the changes that Resident Evil has made in the modern era in terms of like how you go about saving and just kind of adding some quality of life stuff, I think the original Resident Evil would be awesome. Exiting that mansion and having like the dogs waiting for you remains one of my favorite and most horrific gaming memories of my life and also my early childhood. Like I had a lot of fun watching that game be played and like hanging out and trying it for myself, but rebooting it up in the modern era, I'm like, this is kind of not the best time. Like you sort of have to, like my experience with it was I sort of had to force myself through the general construction of it to get to all the fun that there is to be had. And I feel like Capcom has really shown that they are like they're one of the best in terms of remaking these games. And I feel like they have such a good understanding of what makes their games good and how to translate that to the modern era. Because like something I talk about a lot is with remakes, to me, the ideal remake is more of that reimagining, because I think in order to remake something and make it feel like a modern version of that old thing, you do inherently need to change some elements of it, because it's akin to like when you translate something. If you're translating a work of fiction or poetry or something, you can't do a direct translation because it wouldn't make sense. You need to capture the sentiment that the author was trying to convey. And I think games are the same, where you're trying to capture the ideas and the general construction, but you can't just drag and drop it over because it's a different audience with different sensibilities and things that they're used to. So I think that would be an awesome one. They did 2, they did 3. I'm like, I don't know what direction you're going to go in. I'm going to be excited either way. Yes. I think either way it's going to be fun, but I feel like that one I would love, even though I know it already had one, but it needs it again.
Yeah, keep on doing them. Yeah, I'm with you there. And also, RE4 is on my list of games I would like to see get a remake for very similar reasons. I know RE4 way more further along in terms of how playable it is than RE1. And so like I don't even need it to be reimagined, even if it was, hey, we are giving it the RE2 remake treatment, but it is going to be more. Like it is going to be more in line with what you remember from RE4 in terms of the moment to moment, and really we're just like sprucing up how it controls and the textures and all that stuff. Even that I'd be totally down for. I think that'd be great for it. Speaking of horror games, Killian C wrote in and says, MGS1, but that's too easy. The real answer is the first Silent Hill. I feel it's a title that is hidden under the gigantic shadow that is Silent Hill 2. Depending on who would make it, I think there's a lot you can do with the original Silent Hill. For example, updated controls, you can create new moments that mess with longtime fans and keeps things interesting, and introduce new performances that could help bring life to the characters. To keep going with the audience submissions, Marty Primmett writes in and says, I would love to see an Infamous remake. I would like to see this because it's not currently possible to play Infamous on current consoles. I wouldn't mind Metal Gear Solid as well because I haven't played it before. I love everybody who's like, this is my answer, but also Metal Gear Solid, which is fair. But yeah, I think Infamous is a good one to shout out just for the idea of remakes of games that just aren't playable on current consoles or in a modern sense. That's the thing that I'm always for, like bringing things forward that aren't playable, because I think as we go, there becomes less and less of a reason to let things die in the past. Why is Infamous not playable in an ideal form on modern platforms? I assume, I mean, Jenny, you might know, is Infamous on PlayStation now? That's one that I would assume would be on there.
I actually don't know offhand. Barrett, I don't know if you know. I know you've spent more time on PlayStation now than
I'm looking it up because those are games that I've never really played besides Second Son. So I'm looking it up now.
Yeah, I would love some Infamous brought forward in a remake fashion too. I think that would be cool. I think, especially now that we have the Spider-Man Insomniac games, they are on there. Okay, that's what I would expect. And so at the very least, you have that. But I would still love just more like native to the console ways to play, just because streaming isn't always ideal. But yeah, like with Spider-Man and Miles Morales and Spider-Man 2 coming up, you have Insomniac owning that open world superhero space, and I think it could be cool to have some kind of competition, or like some kind of alternate option for a good quality, dope
It's
ass
just
superhero game.
Insomniac competing with itself, right? It's like
Yeah,
Wolverine versus Spider-Man.
yeah,
Either way, we win.
exactly.
They're like, I'll
But
just make my own competition because no one else is doing it.
does Infamous speak to you? Would you care about a remake at all?
I would, in the sense that it would incentivize me to actually check it out because I missed it the first time around, but I'm not like, going to bed at night with that wish underneath my pillow. You know what I mean? Like
For sure.
just because I didn't have that initial contact. Though I do want to give a shout out to David Mertz in the chat, who, when we were talking about like, oh, is Infamous on PS now? They were like, it is. I just looked yesterday. So like the desire is real.
There.
Like people are out here searching it up. So yeah, I think just in general, having like a nice, I think what both of our lists speak to is like the suite of what makes PlayStation. I think they have done a great job at bringing so many of them forward. Even just if you look around online at people's like wish lists for remakes, depending on what, like I looked at some older ones like that people have posted, and a lot of those games did get remade. Like, so like, things like Demon Souls was a highly requested one for a really long time, across like, outlets and YouTube videos and things like that. So it has been cool seeing some of the bigger IPs come through and have that kind of revitalization in the modern era.
So to like go through a few more of mine, I have Persona 3 and 4. I think those would be dope, especially 4. I guess both, right? Like I've not played through Persona 3, and that's the one that I've been wanting to play through for the longest time, but it's just not easy to find ways to go back to that game in a way that I want to do. I don't always want to bust out my PS2 or a PSP to play that game, or even my Vita, right? Like I would love for that game to make its way to PS4, PS5 somehow. And then 4, 4 is one of my favorite games, and I would just love to see it with that same level of production and it's like polished aesthetic as Persona 5, because Persona 5 visually just looks so stunning. And at the time, Persona 4, I think, had really stunning UI and had like really good direction in a lot of its monsters and environments and all that stuff. But going back to it, it looks like a PS2 game, right? It looks like an older game now, and I would love a version of that.
If you just
that
like spruce up
good.
the UI and menu design just a little bit to have it be a little more easier, not even easier, but just like a little more intuitive, like Persona 5 was, with like its like battle system and all that stuff, and going through like that was when I tried to play Persona 4 Golden for the first time, like that was a weird thing to go back to, and that was like the thing that made me drop off. Like I really liked the characters and the story that it was setting up, but like the actual gameplay and like kind of going through all the menus, it was like, this kind of feels like a chore to go back to in a way. So yeah, I would personally love a Persona 4 kind of spruce up there.
Yeah. And then another one that I have on my list, but instead of me telling you about it, I'm going to let Vitz Patel tell you about it. Vitz Patel wrote in to talk to us about Eco. They say, we've seen Shadow of Colossus receive the remake treatment, but we've only had the remaster treatment of the original game from Team Eco on the PS3. It's still a super special title to me, and would love to be able to play it again on modern systems. And I echo that. Eco is one that I love so much that doesn't get talked about as much as Shadow of Colossus, but I think it is I think it's such an excellent game, both from art style and art direction, and like establishing what that Team Eco aesthetic is. But then it just being a really dope puzzle game. I think there's a lot of goodness there in Eco, and I would love to see it given the same Blue Point Shadow of Colossus treatment.
Do you think, here's a question I have for you, as someone that's a Shadow of the Colossus stan, because I did not like Shadow of the Colossus. Though I've considered beating it just specifically to go back to y'all's like review of it, which I think that review's hilarious in the sense that Greg's like, I don't like this game and I don't think I'm gonna like it. And then he like finishes it, he's like, yep. Yeah, I still don't like this game. But I respect the process, and I'm kind of obsessed with it. So I might give it another go and just really try to see it through. But my question for you is, since I'm someone that didn't like Shadow, would I like Ico? Like, are they different? Okay.
I mean,
then I'm good. Y'all can
depending on, here's the thing. When people say they don't like Shadow of Colossus, usually the go-to is the controls and climbing and like not liking the stamina system and all these things, which is totally fair. Like anybody who tells me
the game, right?
any time, yeah, and it's stuff that I like. Like that's the thing is the things that people say they don't like, I'm like, I totally get that. Those are the things that I do love about the game, and so it's that thing of preference and what are you coming to it for? I like that stuff. Eco doesn't have the same like struggle of climbing a colossus and them shaking you off and you having to do that all over again. It is like, I mean, it's a similar world, and like similar, it's that similar game feel of playing as a character that seems really fragile in the world that they're in, and you are in Eco, you are playing as this kid who has to guide this girl throughout the map, and a lot of the puzzles kind of hinge on that, kind of hinge on you being able to take this girl on the largest, like the longest escort mission ever, you know, through these environments and solve the puzzles of how do you get this girl to come with you to the other side of the platform or whatever the thing is. And meanwhile, you have these demon monsters that come after you, and you hit them with a stick to like get them to go away, as Barrett is showing right now on the video. And again, like for me, I think the thing that really speaks to me about Eco is more so the like the art of it, because I really love the look and feel of it. I do like the puzzle aspects, and I do like the things like the score and the story and all that. Eco for the time was just a very different game, and I loved all of that. And I love the same things in Shadow Colossus, and I love the same things in The Last Guardian. I don't think that's going to speak to everybody. And I totally understand that it doesn't speak to everybody. And so I would say if you didn't like Shadow Colossus, it's hard for me to want to recommend Eco, but you might get into it because it doesn't have those same, like, I guess, struggle moments to Shadow Colossus of getting thrown off a thing. It has different struggle moments for sure, but
I think that is one thing. Like, I like that you mentioned like the things that you like about it are the things that people who say they don't like it or complain about, because I think that does speak to how those remakes have gone, where they like remastered Shadow at first, and then they remade it fully, like for the. And I remember playing the remaster or remake at the time, like the first one they did, and being like, nah, this like it feels like old to me in a negative way. And I put it down, and then they came out with it again, and I'm like, okay, maybe this will do it. But I think that's the reason that if that game doesn't grab you almost in the first time, it's the remake isn't gonna do it, because if you have a problem with like the fundamental construction of the game, like they're not gonna come. If they change that, it would just be a different game. So I think that's probably why those ones keep not hitting for me, because they still have those same core elements that don't really connect with me, but obviously speak to a massive audience. Because there's plenty of people that love those games, because that's why they keep getting remade. But it is yet to click for me. But I don't know.
Janet, we're far into this topic of the show, so we got to wrap up in a second. But I want to do quick shout outs. The rest of my list: Chrono Trigger, Tony Hawk Underground, and Underground 2. I'd love to get the Tony Hawk Pro Skater remake treatment that those games just got. And then Burnout 3 Takedown, I'd love to see remade or even remastered in some form. But then shout out to the write-ins. You know, Ryan Higgins wrote in to talk about Buzz the Quiz Game getting a remake, which would be awesome. Yasin Bulhan wrote in about Onimusha. And then there's one I do want to read from Emmett Watkins Jr. I'll make it the last one. But before I read it, Jana, do you have any final shout outs that you want to give for games that you think deserve a remake?
I'm just looking forward to what we end up getting. Hopefully we end up getting something at the Game Awards with this whole announcement. And we'll see what it is. You know, hopefully that'll be a big thing for either the holiday season or maybe something to look forward to in the next calendar year. We've talked a lot about like the future of PlayStation and what next year looks like. And I think it would be in line with their ethos and what they seem to be going for, to throw in like a really beloved and exciting remake for people alongside the projects that speak more towards the future of PlayStation. So we'll see what it is. Maybe it'll be something that we have no idea. We've never heard of this.
I hope it's something
really
exciting.
this.
Yeah, when we talked about it, I was talking about like it seems like it's probably going to be like a medieval remake in terms of something obscure that a certain fan base is going to love, but I couldn't think of what they could announce in December that would make us go, oh, like aside from the things we just listed on this episode, which if it's one of the things we listed on this episode, hell yeah, let's fucking go. But
it's all of them.
Oh, we're making it all.
We're remaking all of the video games.
We're remaking the PlayStation.
One that I wanted to shout out really quick is just Bully. I really love.
Oh yes,
that's a really good one.
If we're talking about Rockstar like era, like PS2 era games, and them doing the whole GTA trilogy, like Bully was the one Rockstar game I was allowed to play growing up because my mom knew what Grand Theft Auto was.
That's funny.
I eventually was able to like play San Andreas and stuff, but this was like my Rockstar game growing up. So I would love a remake of this. I know it's like available from PS2 to PS4, but so was the GTA trilogy, you know. So either remake it or give me a sequel, especially because like I think they could do some really fun things with like modern era of like shitty high schooler kids being shitty to each other. Like I think that would be really interesting.
That's such a smart shout out. I'm mad I didn't think of it, because I still haven't played it through in its entirety, but I actually started playing that like a year or two ago, where I downloaded it on a whim because I'm like, I'm never played this, and everyone says it's still actually pretty good, and it really holds up like incredibly well.
It's weird how well it holds up,
especially given like the context of like it's about, in part, about bullying and like kids being shade to each other. So I'm like, oh, I hope it's not going to be like, I don't know, really awful, but it's weirdly not, but it's still like playing with those themes, and you like do all these.
Dude,
I love the breadth of stuff you do.
There are some
in that
moments
game.
where it's like, like this is hard to get back to.
I remember being at GameStop with my sister, and like I was probably like 16, I would say maybe 15. And like my sister was with me at GameStop just hanging out at the mall, and I tried to get her to buy me Bully, and I could not convince her to get me this game because it was called She's like, "What's the game about?" And I was like, bullying, and she's like, "No, I'm not getting you this game." And I was like, "Damn it!" I eventually got it myself.
You should have sold her and been like, you go to high school and you fight against bullying. That's how you say.
I didn't know at the time. I thought it was about bullying.
In a way, that is an angle
kind
of
of
it.
like what it's about, which I love.
Yeah, it's like a shitty kid sent to a place that's supposed to fix shitty kids, but it's actually just full of like terrible people because that's.
I love that it's called Bullworth Academy.
Yeah, like it's
so on the nose.
I had so much fun. Like I only played like a couple hours of it. I'd like to go back and finish it, but I had so much fun in that just because it has so many different mechanical elements to it. Like you can skateboard in the game. Not that the skateboarding is like amazing or anything, but you can skateboard. I really was into going to class in that game. I'm like, do I want to cut class? Do I not? And I'm like, time for English class. And like, I was into it. Like, it was so much fun.
In a weird way, this game had a lot of Yakuza in it, like the Yakuza games. In the way that it had that same level of open world, and like weird activities that you can get into, and even skateboarding. Like I was playing Lost Judgment, and Lost Judgment has a lot of skateboarding in it, and so it's funny that both these games have kind of the same method of transportation too.
And I love that you could like choose to skip class, but if you got caught, you would get sent like to class and stuff like that. And
you could,
but
like,
if you go to class, it like would
it
would actually help with like things that you can do out in the world and stuff. God. What a great game.
What a game. On the same train of thought, I do want to shout out the Warriors as well. That's one that I always forget to bring up because I always just resign to they'll never get that license again. But dude, the Warriors from Rockstar on PS2 is such an underrated, fantastic video game. Like if you haven't played it, it is a beat 'em up game for the most part, and it has some open environments to it, but it works as a, I want to say, prequel to the Warriors because it leads into right where that movie starts and tackles the events that led up to the events of the movie. And that game just played phenomenally. Had a lot of dope multiplayer modes. You can do like gang fights and do like there's a lot of options.
Plus is that they were able to re-release it also for PS2 to PS4.
You know what? That's a good point.
To do that.
That's a good point. And they're Rockstar. Rockstar is able to get shit done a lot of the time. But to wrap up this topic of the show, I'm going to pull a write-in from Emmett Watkins Jr., who writes in and says, as far as which PlayStation games deserve a remake, there are a lot of great answers, but Resistance and Infamous are too obvious, and something like Warhawk or Rise to Honor feels like too much of a long shot. So to be a little outside of the box, I'm going to say Fat Princess. Now, I know that the core premise would have to be modified since basing an entire game around a fat joke just don't feel right in current times, but that game truly was a great class-based multiplayer game. It was pretty much a super accessible MOBA, complete with upgrades you would earn throughout a match, wide maps with secret paths, and a main objective in each base to fight over. Games like League of Legends and Dota are so popular now that I think having one of those on console would be lucrative for Sony. Plus, unlike failed MOBA attempts like Killstrain, I think the more welcoming aesthetic would bring more people in, kind of like Pokemon Unite is doing now. I just think it's an IP that still has plenty of potential if only they got someone to bring it back to its roots after the mid-Fat Princess adventures on PS4. Fat Princess is not one you hear about that often, but I appreciate the obscureness and I appreciate the argument. I think that's a very good argument for Fat Princess, and so thank you for that, Emmett Watkins Jr. Janet, that has been topic of the show. Before we get in to PlayStation updates, let us tell you about our sponsors.
This episode is brought to you by Honey. Online shopping. Everybody does it. There's no shame in it unless you're doing it without Honey. That is, you should be ashamed of yourself if that's the case. That's because Honey is the free shopping tool that scours the internet for promo codes and applies the best one it finds to your cart. Honey supports over 30,000 stores online, from tech and gaming sites to fashion brands and even food delivery. It's also super simple to use. When you go to checkout, the Honey button drops down and all you have to do is click apply coupons. Then you sit back, relax, little Honey guy dances, and Honey searches for the coupons for you. If it finds a working code, you just watch the price drop. I use Honey for everything. I've been using it for a very, very long time, many, many years. I've saved thousands of dollars, honestly, over time. If you don't already have Honey, you could be straight up missing out on free savings. It's literally free, installs in just a few seconds, then you're good to go. And by getting it, you'll be doing yourself a solid and supporting this show. Get Honey for free at joinhoney.com/kinda. That's joinhoney.com/kinda to get Honey for free. Next up, shout out to Upstart. Carrying a credit card balance month to month can make getting out of debt feel like a never-ending slog, but Upstart can help you pay it off and start living your life. Upstart is the fast, easy way to get a personal loan all online, whether it's paying off credit cards or consolidating high-interest debt. Upstart can offer smarter loan rates because they look at more than just your credit score alone. Upstart also considers factors like your income, current employment, and credit history for loans between $1,000 and $50,000. One of my very close friends had a lot of debt in a bunch of different places, and Upstart was able to help consolidate it, made it just simple and easy for him to understand, and now he's debt-free, living his best life. Find out how Upstart can lower your monthly payments today when you go to upstart.com/kindafunny. That's upstart.com/kindafunny. Don't forget to use this URL to let them know that we sent you. Loan amounts will be determined based on your credit, income, and certain other information provided in your loan application. Upstart.com/kindafunny. And finally, shout out to Chime. When your online checking account balance is running low, a $33 overdraft fee just makes it worse. And overdraft fees have gotten wild. In 2019, banks took $11 billion in overdraft fees. Oh my Wow. Chime does things differently. Chime is an award-winning app and debit card that has saved its members more than $10 billion in overdraft fees. You deserve to have financial peace of mind. Join the millions of Americans already loving Chime. Sign up takes only 2 minutes and it doesn't affect your credit score. You can get started today at chime.com/kfgames. That's chime.com/kfgames. chime.com/kfgames. Banking services provided by and debit card issued by the Bancorp Bank or Stride Bank, NA members FDIC. Spot Me eligibility requirements apply. Overdraft only applies to debit card purchases and cash withdrawals. Limits start at $20 and may be increased up to $200 by Chime. Chime member overdraft fees savings based on eligible members' use of Spot Me versus $33 average overdraft fee. Overdraft fee data based on bank rate checking account survey and CRL June 2020 overdraft fees report. Chime.com/kfgames.
And we're back with PlayStation updates. Of course, this is your greatest hits of PlayStation news for the week. Again, like I said earlier at the top of this episode, this is the part 2 to our KindaFunny Games Daily from last week. And I guess this where I'm going to start off, we actually didn't talk about, so I'm excited to talk about this one. But these are 2 stories that we're going to tackle in updates that have to do with GamesIndustry.biz interviews that were had with both Jim Ryan, that you know and love from PlayStation, and then Jade Raymond. We're going to start off with Jim Ryan, and I'm going to ask the question, could PlayStation games do more sales? I'm hopping into this article written by Andy Robinson at Video Games Chronicle. Sony Interactive Entertainment boss Jim Ryan has said he's frustrated at how PlayStation's first-party games are gated to their current console model audience of tens of millions of players. Speaking in a keynote during Games Industry Live, or GI Live, London, the PlayStation boss said he aspired to reach hundreds of millions of players and rival the reach of movies and music. Quote, I would also like to see a world where the games that we make at PlayStation can be enjoyed by many tens of millions of people, perhaps hundreds of millions of people. Right now, success with the current console model, a really great PlayStation hit, you're talking 10 or 20 million people being able to play that game. He continued, quote, we're talking about games stacking up against music. We're talking about games stacking up against movies. Music and movies that can be enjoyed by almost limitless audiences. And I think some of the art that our studios are making is some of the finest entertainment that has been made anywhere in the world. And to kind of gate the audience for the wonderful art, wonderful entertainment that our studios are making, to gate the audience for that at 20 or 30 million frustrates me. I would love to see a world where hundreds of millions of people can enjoy those games, end quote. Ryan's comments are surprising considering Sony's publicly stated commitment to console exclusives. In the past year, it has softened its approach to PC, with some notable games having already been released on PC and more planned, but it's also heavily suggested this will be limited to back catalog titles. PlayStation is also not pushing streaming as heavily as its console competitor Microsoft, which allows its users to play Xbox games streamed to mobile devices, PC, or older consoles via the cloud. The company hasn't released many mobile games either, though Ryan has said that PlayStation is planning to bring some of its iconic IP to mobile during its current business year ending in March 2022. Speaking in a PlayStation blog interview published in June, PlayStation Studios head Herman Holst said the platform holder was, quote, still early on in our planning for PC, but that its PlayStation consoles would always be the priority for new releases. Janet Garcia, do you think there's a world where PlayStation games are selling hundreds of millions of copies?
I feel like it's mean to say no because it just sounds so negative. But I think when you think of games versus like how other media has progressed, it's kind of apples and oranges, both in terms of like how hard it is to get games out there versus like where streaming and stuff has taken like music and TV and movies. Like, I don't know that, we always talk about like Game Pass and Netflix of games. And I'm like, I mean, it's not really though, because like when you look at Netflix, there's an insane amount of content on there versus the game space. It's much smaller than that. So yeah, like I think a reach like that, maybe one day, but I think we're kind of far away from that. I think it's difficult to negotiate reach versus the amount of money something makes. Because when you think of something like music, like most artists don't really make money off of streaming or sales. They make money from like, that comes from a different place where it comes from their live performances. So I think the question is, if you made it easier for PlayStation games to have that reach, how do you negotiate that with also have the business element of needing to make money and also needing to make your platform appealing? Certainly we've seen, like, as this article mentions, like on the other side with Microsoft, where they're like, hey, play anywhere. It's all a win for us in some form. So however you want to slice it, you have these different like methodologies. I don't know how much like analysis has been done on the way that has increased players or what that's meant for their bottom line. But I think as it is now, where PlayStation is very much known as the powerhouse of exclusives, yeah, that is inherently limiting. But this does kind of speak to like that desire for more. And we are seeing hints of that with things like PC. So I think without making a drastic change, the answer is no. But this interview seems to kind of hint at, oh, maybe like, we could find more ways to sort of expand what we have going for us. What about you?
I think the sentiment is pretty conflicting from Jim Ryan, because the whole I think like marketing strategy behind PlayStation is exclusives. We're going to sell you consoles because we're going to develop exclusive games for these consoles to sell the consoles, and the way you make that happen is by having the games gated on your platform. And we've seen it in recent years where PlayStation has been making more of an effort to put their games on PC post launch, and I think that probably is going to go far in terms of allowing them to break through a sales ceiling, whatever they're trapped on the PlayStation consoles. But even then, I think there is still somewhat of a barrier for PlayStation games selling phenomenally in a way that goes beyond like where we're at currently. Hundreds of millions, I'm sure for him is like, that is the dream goal, right? That is him embodying the, hey, I want everybody to play our video games. I want to rival movies and music, right? I think that is a good goal to have. I think that is something that you want to express. At the core of that, I think you are saying you want to sell more, and I think with that, the way you make that happen is by not gating your games, right? Like selling your games on other platforms. And I think for PlayStation, that's just not a thing that's possible. Outside of their current strategy with PC, I think the other thing would be streaming. But I feel like the PlayStation, for what they're doing with streaming, PS Now is way ahead of its time. And to be fair to PlayStation, they hopped on that streaming train, I think, before plenty of other folks did. But I don't think they developed it in a way that makes me believe that is going to be a legitimate way to experience those games. Maybe that changes in years. Maybe PlayStation Now grows as the technology grows. But where I'm at now, I don't think of PlayStation Now as, oh yeah, I have a smart TV, I'm going to play PlayStation Now on that thing. Or, hey, I have my PC set up, let me boot up PlayStation Now. Like, I don't think that is a way that people think about PlayStation Now. I think when you think about wanting to play a God of War or Horizon or a Spider-Man, the audience at large still considers the actual PlayStation consoles the way to play those games, because the PlayStation has not really made it a thing to be able to play the next Horizon or the next God of War through those services, especially because they're not on those services as well. And so
I think too, like their current structure for their funnel is all leading back to the console. Like even with the PC stuff, it's like I mean at some point like we'll put some of those on there, but that's with the idea of like maybe if we put Horizon on PC super late after the fact, you'll want to get the PS5 for the sequel to this game, which isn't going to hit PC for a while or maybe potentially ever because we're making these decisions kind of as we go. Like they just have a different model, and the model is inherently limiting in some regards, even though it has like a different kind of benefit. Because again, you're like kind of catering toward different audiences. Where like on the Microsoft side, it's I was listening to XCast a bunch this weekend. Shout out to XCast because that got me through the first 5 miles.
Hey, we don't shout out that podcast on this podcast. This is the PlayStation podcast.
Hey,
we're building an audience.
I produce both, and you know what? They're both great.
Right. Anyway, but that, I was shocked to hear how much of it isn't like just when I think Xbox, I think of like the little tower that I have for like my Series X. And they're out here talking about like technical PC stuff and all that. I'm like, we would never talk about that on this show because it has not like our audience has. I mean, maybe our audience is interested in that, but not from this show, right? They came here for PlayStation content. Yeah. PlayStation content is the console. It's the PS5.
I think that's the difference.
And that's it.
PlayStation, when we talk about PlayStation, when we say PlayStation, we're saying PlayStation the console, PlayStation the platform. We're saying Xbox, it is more on the platform side than just the console because Xbox has a heavy presence on PC. You know, like Xbox has games on the Switch. I think it turns into a different conversation, and one that is very relevant to what Jim Ryan is saying here. Because again, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that PlayStation games are gated on PlayStation because that is the strategy and that is why we buy the PlayStation. The same thing that these companies have been doing since video games have existed in this major of a form. You know, Nintendo does the same thing. Xbox has done the same thing where it is, you want to play our games, you have to buy our platform or you have to buy our console. But I think that gives you a ceiling. And I think, I do think it would be an interesting conversation of how do you increase the attachment rate? Because like PlayStation games generally sell very well for the most part, right? Like Jim Ryan cites the 10 million, 20 million number. The thing that always blows me away whenever we are talking about sales numbers on KFGD especially, because that's usually where we handle something like sales numbers. The thing that usually blows me away is to see whenever Nintendo releases their sales numbers for software and to see just the enormous attachment rate that Nintendo had. Like Animal Crossing, I think last time it was reported had like 30 million copies sold on like 80 million Switches, and it's like how that is a large attachment rate, and I think part of that is the fact that when you're buying a Nintendo console, you're probably more so buying that console for the first party stuff than third party stuff, right? Whereas on PlayStation, I'm sure there's a large amount of the audience that is like, no, I'm buying this so I can play Call of Duty, or I'm buying this so I can play FIFA. I will say,
in defense of PlayStation for a hot second, in terms of relation of that comparison, you can't buy the Switch for FIFA. This is gonna be the worst FIFA experience of your life. So I do think, in a way, that benefit is also like, I guess, the con in terms of what your audience might be going for, and it might not be, what you and I think of when we think of like the PlayStation mascots, like the stuff that you see when the PlayStation Studios logo spins and like the sacred symbols spin around. It's like, yeah, these are all IPs that like we love and we've played and we talk about all the time versus someone who's just, getting it for FIFA or like 2K or whatever. I think another part of this conversation too is like, man, we really need to get this hardware out there because it's still so hard to get a PS5, which is like, and again, that's part of the con of this model in a sense. Like it is contingent on getting the PS5 out there as that gap continues to grow. You mentioned KFGD. We talk a lot about like number stuff, and I mentioned what the top downloads were for September on PS5 versus PS4. And I think I was on that episode with Tim, and we were talking about like how you're now seeing that gap finally start to form, which is great for PS5 owners, where it's like, oh, it finally feels like on the PS5 I'm having fresh experiences, or I'm really feeling like I'm utilizing the power of this machine through like director's cut editions and like new games, even if they're, not like the absolute biggest IPs in the world, but, exclusive SKUs here and like all these other features. As that gap continues, it's great for PS5 owners, but it sucks if you're a PS4 owner who wants a PS5, but just can't get one in any way that's even close to simple. You basically have to have the money at the ready at all times and be checking your email, and hopefully it doesn't get filtered out into spam when PlayStation eventually calls you up to the stage to order their really expensive new product. Like it's a really difficult situation out the gate, which this is not new for console launches at all, but certainly things like the pandemic and then different things with like what's going on in the hardware scene has made it even harder to make this something that, you know, you can't casually on Black Friday go up and get a PS5. And that's definitely gotta hurt them, even if it's not in a way that is to an extreme detriment to the company.
Yeah, and I mean, to even continue on with the Nintendo comparison, I think talking about the IP, I think there's something to be said about how Nintendo feeds in. Nintendo has a lot of branches of fewer IP, and this is something we've been talking about a lot with PlayStation over the last year, of the focus on, hey, this generation we might have less IP, and this is something that I don't believe they've said. I think this is something that we've inferred just based on reports of like all the Last of Us and Naughty Dog stuff that we got toward the beginning of the year, of like Last of Us remake and them doing a Last of Us TV show, and then reports of the mobile stuff and how they're probably gonna have some kind of Last of Us mobile game and like maybe a Ghost mobile game, a Spider-Man mobile game. I think there's the idea of, in the way that for Nintendo, we got Detective Pikachu movie, we got Detective Pikachu game, we got Pokemon, we got a bunch of different shit that is Pokemon shit. We got Mario, we got Mario Kart, we got Mario Party, we got Zelda, we got the Zelda crossbow game on the Wii, which is a bad example. But you get what I mean in terms of there is a lineage and a building out of the Nintendo IP that I think lends toward more. Yeah, I think retention is a perfect word for it, right? Like audiences continually showing up to and
You turned to a robot.
Yeah.
oh my god, am I still robotic?
No, you're normal now.
No,
But
okay.
now,
Oh no, it's
I don't
going
know.
back in, maybe reset Discord.
Oh, God.
Bless. Janet.
Yeah, Blessing was punished for talking about Nintendo too much. Literally, like
honestly.
Discord's just like, we're off this stuff.
How dare he on a PlayStation podcast? You know what I'm saying, Janet?
He dared.
Yeah.
Should we wait or should I just keep going? Because I can
keep
just,
go- keep
I can just go.
just start
Okay, so
spitballing
responding
here.
to what I think Blessing was going to say was that idea of longevity and retention. And I do agree with that. Like, I think it's so challenging to do a long-term IP where it doesn't get stale, right? If you checked out our Far Cry review that we did over, I think it was just Gamescast generally, where we talked about like, hey, Far Cry is more Far Cry. That can be good, that can be bad, it just depends. And I think the fact that there can be that debate with Far Cry speaks to the fact that it's not clearly fresh and it's also not clearly stale. It just kind of is. And I think, you know, something like Mario, like Zelda, even though there has been a mixed bag, and especially if you go to the ancillary non-mainline games, but like that's there, you know. Yesterday, and I'll try to keep it brief with Nintendo stuff because I know sometimes people are like, oh, it's not a Nintendo podcast, but I think it's relevant to the conversation. I was playing Metroid Dread on my Switch, and meanwhile my boyfriend was playing Fusion for the first time. I'm like, yep, we're still out here, we're still, you know, in space. It has that continuation. Though I think on PlayStation's defense is it hasn't been around for like it doesn't have quite the same size history. But I think it's interesting, Blessing, you bringing up that like this era is maybe them starting to really get those strongholds. But the question is, how do you keep that stronghold and keep it fresh? Because that's what Nintendo's been. That's why Nintendo can keep those long franchises. And no one's asking like, is Mario washed? Is Zelda washed? Like, is this game the same? Because they're able to innovate enough where they do feel like fresh installments each time. It'll be interesting to see how these other IPs end up doing that.
Yeah, and I think last generation, me and Greg have had this conversation before, I think, but last generation felt like almost like not a restart, but a new era for PlayStation in terms of them establishing a bunch of different IP, right? You got Ghost on the PS4 generation, you got Insomniac Spider-Man, and like Last of Us, of course, came out toward the end of the PS3 generation, but I kind of count that because I would say that fed into the PS4 generation. It really helped.
Remaster literally a year later, you know.
Yeah,
Last
and I think
is always the fulcrum game. That's its role. It's like it's the best of the old gen. And one of the first things you play on the new gen.
And I also think that helps set the tone of what that new PlayStation was going to be. Last of Us from Naughty Dog, I think, was the blueprint of, hey, yeah, this is what the next God of War is going to look like. You know, the reboot of God of War, I would say, is a similar thing. And this generation, I think we're going to see a lot of follow-ups to a lot of those. We've already gotten Miles Morales. We're going to get Spider-Man 2. And you're going to see new stuff as well. I mean, PlayStation has come out and said that they are going to have, you know, X amount of new IP, right? I forget the exact number, but they've talked about how they are going to have new IP as well. But I do think that PlayStation Studios is doubling down on, hey, let's figure out how to maintain and build that retention. And I think with that is going to come more sales. And I don't think we're going to hit hundreds of millions, but I do think I wouldn't be surprised if you did start to see numbers rivaling the Nintendo numbers in terms of, hey, once we put out the Last of Us TV show and Last of Us Factions and a Last of Us mobile game, then the Last of Us Remake is going to sell this much, and then Last of Us Part 3, if we make it, is going to sell even this much, because you're putting in more focus into maintaining certain brands that you might not have been able to do in the last few generations. I wouldn't be surprised to see that build up numbers as well.
Yeah, I think definitely the expansion of like IP to like other verticals is part of that. I think my concern or question is, how are they going to have like that kind of staying power with something like The Last of Us, something that takes so long to make and is also so story heavy. And I think we're kind of seeing that with the rumored remake and then the upcoming like multiplayer thing. Yeah. But I'm wondering how much of that can be frequent enough to really feel like a continuous through line. That's my big question. I'm interested to see how they sort of approach that, especially in conversation of, is Naughty Dog going to do something else and something new, you know?
Let's keep talking about PlayStation Studios. Like I said, there were a couple of interviews that PlayStation folks did with GamesIndustry.biz. Let's dive into the Jade Raymond one. And I want to ask the question, could a user-generated game work on PlayStation after Dreams? Because, of course, Dreams we know and love, and I love it so much. And you can go check out the Blessing Show episode about Dreams, which was made in Dreams. YouTube.com's Kind of Funny Games. Blessing Show playlist. Go watch it. But, you know, we talked a little bit about how Jade Raymond, in her talk with GamesIndustry.biz, was talking about the her new PlayStation exclusive game, including social elements and user-generated content. I'm going to pull from Jared Moore at IGN, who gave us a very good write-up about it. Jade Raymond has said that Haven's upcoming PlayStation exclusive will include social elements and user-generated content, adding that it's being created by many of the devs behind the original Assassin's Creed. Earlier this year, it was announced that Raymond has started Haven Entertainment Studios, an independent company in Montreal, currently working on an unannounced new IP for PlayStation. During an interview with GamesIndustry.biz, the studio boss delved a little further into what fans can expect from the game and exactly who's making it. Quote, "There are three things that are really exciting to me, which are also the pillars for the way that we're thinking about these things," says Raymond. First is games as a social platform. The pandemic has proven that gameplay is the social glue that binds communities, especially for the younger generation. This is what you do and how you make friends and hang out. That is something that we really want to build and design for. While there are plenty of games around that include social elements in their design, the second concept on Raymond's list adds another layer to the direction in which the studio looks to be taking its new IP. Quote, "The second thing is thinking about the remix generation. It started a little while ago. There is this age of self-expression where we're designing our own Nike ID shoes. We're reading our friends' blogs rather than what our professional journalists are writing. And I think that has continued to go further with things like TikTok. That's another thing that we're thinking about at the heart of this IP. It is beyond user-generated content. It's about taking that self-expression and remix concept to the next level," end quote. Raymond continues, quote, "When we created Assassin's Creed, we were really thinking about creating an IP that can be owned by creative teams in the future. We thought if we create a framework of anything that takes place in a moment in history and has the assassins behind it, that will be consistent with the brand so teams can evolve that and own it. Now, what we're thinking about is creating an IP where it's not just professional teams, but it is designed to be owned by fans and can evolve through that." Like I said, Janet, earlier on, I evoked Dreams and the idea of user-generated content in that game. And Dreams, again, a game that I love, but a game that isn't the most popular game, and I wish more people played it. And it also reminds me a little bit of Death Stranding as well.
Hold on, Bless.
Am I robotic again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Am I fixed? Am I still robotic? Should I restart?
Yeah, you're coming
fixed,
back.
but
Am I fixed?
Yeah.
I wonder what that is.
You just don't want Dreams to shine, honestly.
I think PlayStation is hearing me talk about Dreams, and then they also heard the Nintendo talk, and they're like, "Shut it down."
They're like, "Cut the mic, cut the mic."
People can't know. They can't know the truth. But Janet, for you, like when you hear, do you believe in? I'll ask the idea of a game with heavy user-generated content and heavy quote-unquote remix content akin to TikTok working on PlayStation.
Man, I kind of want to say no, but then at the same time, like Roblox exists, and that's like one of the most popular things that exists. So I'm like, maybe. I think it's like an uphill battle to kind of pull it off, though, because especially like when we think of what is the ethos of PlayStation, when you're thinking of like those powerhouse IPs, and a lot of it is story, which has like a campaign, which is why probably one of the reasons that Dreams initially wasn't going to have a campaign, and then they're like, oh no, we got a single player campaign. And like that was, admittedly, I was that person who was like, I really wish Dreams would have a campaign, and when it did, I was really excited, and I played through that campaign, and I've spent some other time in Dreams as well. And that campaign was sort of a way to get people like me to buy into the initial concept and feel like I'm getting something that's of a known quantity and quality. And then I can dig into the other stuff on my own volition. So I think that's the biggest element that's an uphill battle for this that makes me hesitant to say yes. Especially too, when it's like, I'm so curious as to what that would be if it's not, I think user-generated content in terms of mainstream platforms has done the best when it either is a side portion of an existing like main part of a game, like things like Fortnite has some creator elements in it, but there's also like the main game that you can just go into. Also, Fortnite's freaking gigantic, but you know, that's one example that comes to mind. And then another one is stuff like Little Big Planet or Mario Maker, where it's like you're pulling from something that is established, something that does have a campaign, something that has like a lot of familiarity to it, and then you're getting to play with these pieces that are of a known quantity. I think that is one of the struggles that Dreams had, where it's like you can make whatever, and it's like, okay, like it's a lot of nothing to a lot of people, even though I think Dreams has fantastic stuff. Like there's multiplayer stuff in there that's fun as hell. There's some fun remakes and takes on IPs. Like I think Dreams is incredibly fun to navigate. And I think that team has worked really hard to try to surface and highlight the user-generated content in there that is of value. You know, you were one of the judges on is it the
MP Awards? Yeah,
the MP Awards. Yes. So like, it's not that they're not doing that work or that can't work or that they haven't seen some level of success either. But when we think of something that's gonna, you know, really be on the list of like best PlayStation exclusives, that's really gonna break through as like a standout IP. I think that is the struggle, because it's like if it can be anything, it's also sort of nothing, and I think that's a hard sell for people.
Yeah, and I think that lends to a lot of questions I have about what this is going to be, because when you hear about Jade Raymond is opening up a studio, Haven Studio, they're going to work on a PlayStation exclusive, plenty of things come to mind. I know for me, I'm like, are they going to make a new Assassin's Creed on PlayStation? Like not literally Assassin's Creed, but something that is a new IP that is action adventure and all these things. And so to hear Jade Raymond talk about, you know, the social platform, the remix generation, like all that stuff. My thing is, you mentioned earlier that you are a fan of new, and I like new as well. I like new and fresh, and I like weird ideas. I like the fact that this sounds like something that is going for it and something that is super different and weird. I get concerned in terms of, you know, we've seen this work a few times in the past, aside from things like Roblox and like Minecraft and things of that kind. I don't know if I get the sense that this is going to be that. I don't know if I get the sense of what this is going to be at all, because a lot of the ideas communicated here are kind of amorphous. And like, so is it action, but people are going to be able to customize in ways that are beyond what we've seen before? Or is it like a Dreams? Or is it like a Roblox? And if it is like that, we kind of already have Dreams. Like, are those two things going to coexist? I think a lot of my questions come out of that. But you know, I'm excited to see what comes out of it. You know, it's kind of hard to really form a like a final judgment aside from, you know, this seems weird and I hope it works for them, because I want to see more PlayStation stuff be weird and different and fresh in that way.
Yeah, I think without genre, it's so hard to wrap your head around what this is. And then I think, which, you know, this can be to the benefit, because you mentioned, you know, like the new element where I don't know what this is, and maybe that's cool because I've never seen it before. But also, you got to ask the age-old question that I always bring up on this podcast. Are you the first one to think of it, or has it not been done because it's not a good idea? And I don't know where this one's going to land, because I have trust in Jade Raymond's, you know, insight and ability. And I think I'm really excited by what she's doing at Haven, and the way she speaks about that project and the joy that she has behind it and the excitement of the team, like that gets me excited. And I'm always down for more PlayStation. I'm like, PlayStation exclusive is good. Jade Raymond, good. You know, this other element, maybe good. Like, I don't know. It's different and weird. Like, it at least gives me more to speculate on than which I mentioned this on KFGD, but like the classic, we're looking to push storytelling. I'm like, okay, like that's everyone. Who is it? Get in line.
That's my thing. That's the thing that has me excited, is when we look at the other, like PlayStation Studios has a lot of games in development, as we know, and we can kind of point to each developer and kind of understand, like, all right, cool, they're going to work on a third-person action adventure game. All right, cool. This other developer is also going to work on a third-person action adventure game. All right, cool. I mean, Insomniac's giving us Wolverine, which is another third-person action adventure game, which seems really cool. I'm down for it. But you go through the list, and it is like Deviation Studios seems to be working on a first-person shooter. Every single studio we can kind of point to within PlayStation Studios, I would say it's probably working on a known quantity to some extent. We've even had rumors of Twisted Metal, which is to also an extent unknown quantity. This is something that is different and weird, and that excites me, and it fills me with nervousness. And I think under an umbrella of PlayStation Studios where there's so many developers working on known quantities, I'm totally down for a developer to be like, yeah, let's do some weird shit. Like Media Molecule has been that historically, and they put out Dreams, and again, not a hit, but also a game that has an audience.
It got too weird.
It got too weird, but also has an audience, and I'm happy for what Dreams is in terms of the actual content of it. I wish there was more of a push, and I wish, like, I do have plenty of critiques with Dreams and things that I wish they would do to market it. But outside of that, I'm happy Dreams exists. I hope that I hope this meets in the middle in terms of a thing that not only am I happy exists, but also a thing that is good. Like Death Stranding, I think hit so well for so many people in a similar way, where this is a thing that is weird and different, but for so many people it hit. I hope this can be that as well.
Yeah, I think too with the Media Molecule comparison, yeah, I'm hoping this is more Little Big Planet than Dreams, and just that, like, and when I say that, I mean that Little Big Planet had more of a cohesive and digestible pitch, which I'm not trying to suggest that you shouldn't get creative and innovative, but I also think that, like, there needs to be a more direct and more all-encompassing, ideally there's a more all-encompassing. I also think there's nothing wrong with being like, you know what, this is niche, and the people that love it are going to love it, and the people that aren't going to be interested just aren't going to be interested. And in a way, I think that is kind of what Dreams is, which, again, I can't emphasize enough. Not only am I like, oh, I'm happy that it exists, but it's genuinely a great game. Like, the campaign, I think, is super fun. I think it's well constructed. Again, I do have some critiques of even the campaign, but I had a great time playing Dreams, and I feel like I'm guaranteed to have fun if I boot up Dreams and start searching is it called the Dreamiverse? I think it is called that, right?
The Dreamiverse,
yes. Go dream surfing. Like, it's a good time. Like, I've had, from looking up, y'all talk about wanting remakes, from looking up IPs I like and being like, what are people's interpretations of this IP? Stuff like I've looked up, because, again, Jack and Dexter stan, I've looked up like Jack and Daxter, and people were like, this is my imagination of what Jack 4 could be. Now, did it control that well? No, not necessarily, but I thought it was so cool, like the environmental design and stuff in that one. Then I've looked up multiplayer and just played like random like basketball arcade games in that game. I've looked up just music stuff and listened to people's albums in there. Like, I've looked at like a really high fidelity sandwich or like a breakfast, and I'm like, that's cool. And there's just so much awesome stuff in there. But yeah, I'm really hoping this has a little bit more of a footing. But I'm excited by the idea of like it having a continual through line, like her bringing up Assassin's Creed, and we were just talking about like, how do you make an IP that can have staying power while being fresh? And what she talks about with what Assassin's Creed did, where it's like the idea is simple enough that you can throw this at any era in history, you can put your own spin on it, and it's still going to feel like it's an Assassin's Creed game, and it's in that context. I think that's really exciting. The idea that like there's that forward thinking, and this is someone who's established something that's still going. So we'll see how this turns out or what this ends up being.
Janet, let's talk about PlayStation picks. This is where we highlight a few of the cool looking games on PSN this week. Starting with the big hitters, of course. Back for Blood comes out for PS5 and PS4 on Tuesday, October 12th. The Jackbox Party Pack 8 comes out on PS5 and PS4 on Thursday, October 14th. Crysis Remastered Trilogy comes out on PS5 and PS4 on Friday, October 15th. Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba The Hinokami Chronicles comes out on PS5 and PS4 on Friday, October 15th. And then NHL 22 comes out on PS5 and PS4 on Friday, October 15th. We have just one PlayStation pick for you. I'm going to say it was a slim week. I kind of had to dig for this one. This is a game called Godstrike that's coming to PS5 and PS4 on Thursday, October 14th. Godstrike is a twin-stick shooter where time is your health and currency. Face off against ruthless bosses, intense 1v1 showdowns as Talal, the Last Herald. And you already know I had to give a shout out to a twin stick shooter. I always love a good twin stick shooter, and so if this sounds up your alley, Bear's showing footage right now. It looks very colorful. Seems like there's a lot going on. Reminds me a little bit of Fury, like the art style of Fury in a way. And I dug Fury a lot, but this does seem. I can't tell if it's Boss Rush or not, but either way, it looks like a decent twin stick shooter. If that's your GM. Janet, does this do anything for you?
A little bit. I'm open to twin stick shooters. Oh God, like literally the footage was just like bullet hell, like incarnate. But especially when it's a little bit more generalized and less pattern driven, I don't really thrive in memorizing bullet patterns, but I can like kind of deal with, okay, I'm reacting to these different forms of attacks. And yeah, I like the art style generally. So a little bit. I'm known to pick up a couple stick shooters.
I will say, because I noticed in that trailer that it had launched earlier this year on Nintendo, it didn't get great reviews. Just a heads up, but just make the buyer aware.
Buyer aware. Also, since it's already out on other platforms, that means there's a lot of reviews you can check out before you pick it up on PlayStation. So
exactly,
do your research. Janet, tell me about what you've been playing.
I've been playing Sly Cooper, like I mentioned. I don't know when I'll be able to get back to it, just because there's like other projects going on right now. It's the fall of games, but I just love so much. I know it sounds kind of simple for people that have a normal gaming life who aren't us on these shows, where it's constantly like there's release calendars and content plans and stuff, but it felt so good just to jump into something for fun and to have fun. Like, it was so lighthearted and such a good time. That being said, I also was like, oh my God, I'm like getting my butt kicked in some of these areas, because depth perception is the greatest enemy in that game, as it is for a lot of platformers of that ilk. So we'll see how it goes. But one thing I want to shout out though with Sly Cooper, I was shocked. I was floored at Sly Cooper's voice. Why is it so smooth? Like, have y'all heard Sly Cooper talk lately? Because it's like, I don't know why. I have pictured, cartoony, like he's a cartoon, right? It's like, okay, like little, this little guy, but he's like the suave as all hell. And I'm like, why is it like this? And then I like to, they have like the kind of one of the somewhat antagonists, like the cop lady, I forgot her name. But she's like the classically of that era, like kind of meant to be like hot looking, like sort of some sexual tension. And I'm like, what is going on in this game?
It's like Candy Kong, Barrett.
What?
It's like Candy Kong. You know Candy Kong.
Yeah, Candy Kong.
Yeah.
It was the era
she gives you the musical instruments.
She does.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It was that kind of era at the time. But I also finished Wavelengths for Life is Strange, which I adored. I know we talked about that, I think, last week, where Greg wasn't like super hot on it, but I loved it. I thought it was super fun, and it really helped contextualize more about the characters without feeling like now we're playing Life is Strange, but with Steph. Like, it felt really distinctive in a cool way. And then I'm hoping to beat Far Cry at least sometime this month. I'm very close to the end. And I like put in like, I swear to God, like 6 hours after recording the review, and I'm still not done. And now I'm like, okay, I got to put it down for a bit and do some other stuff, but I'm hoping to pick it back up. But that's it for PlayStation.
You're like a lot of us who were trying to beat Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and we're like, all right, now we're near the end. 10 hours later, all right, now we're near the end. It's like
the end keeps re-showing up. That's awesome. So I don't know what to think anymore, but I would love to finish it just because I put a lot of time into it already, and I am intrigued enough at the story. Especially they threw in a couple like things that I wasn't necessarily expecting, where I'm like, okay, I wonder, given that A and B happened, how is like the main plot going to shake out? Is what I'll say without giving away any spoilers for that game. But yeah, that's it for PlayStation stuff. Non-PlayStation, I'm hitting a Metroid Dread. Many people are. And yeah, we're getting toward the end of the big releases of the year, and that top 10 is finally starting to solidify. So I'm excited to hopefully have some time to go back. I still plan on finishing Ratchet and Clank. I haven't yet, but I want to throw that back into the rotation again. I dipped in a little bit last weekend, or like 2 weekends ago. So hopefully that comes back into the fold. I still plan to finish Uncharted 4, but I don't know. Maybe the holidays, because then I'm playing with my family.
I forgot about that. How's that going?
Like I had that one day, and then I haven't played since, because I'm playing with my brother, which is totally still my fault. Like he's busy too, but like, when it comes to who's not going to be down to sink in hours to a game, it's more likely to be me, because I game all the time for work. So maybe I just don't have time to do it, or I don't have the mental energy to do it. But I'm thinking that if we don't get around to it soon, that it'll be like kind of that Thanksgiving, Christmas break vibe that I can hit it up, because that's also when I'm planning to go back to Sackboy: A Big Adventure, because I'm playing that with 3 other people, which is fun, but like, the schedules, man, like, and in the mood, like, are you in, at one point I'm just gonna have to be like, look, the turkey's in the oven, we're watching some Marvel things on the TV, and like, we need to get through Sackboy, because it's time to finally finish this like launch game. But yeah, that's what I got going on.
Nice. Yeah, I also started up some Wavelengths. I'm not beating it yet, but being an hour in, I am enjoying it. I do like the the gameplay loop being inherently different from core Life is Strange, where you are Greg already described it last week, but you're playing as Steph, you are radio hosting, you are doing ad reads, you have a checklist of things they have to do, but you're when you're in the radio booth, you're in first person and you're controlling things, and then when you're out, you have things that you can do around the record store, and with that you have like a dating app you can go on and all this stuff. I've described it on both like Twitter, and then we did our live stream spoiler cast for MinMax, which people can go check out on youtube.com/MinMax. It was us two, and then Natalie from Fanbyte and Taylor from IGN. And we had a really good discussion about it there. But yeah, I do enjoy all those elements of it. I love the thing that I kept talking about was like how on the nose it feels for me. Like you play a Steph who is new in town, who is takes on a new job as a host, and she has to do ad reads and all this shit. And then on the side, she's like on dating apps and all this stuff. And I was like replaying this game, I was like, man, this is hitting close to home. Man, this feels like this is a blessing ass mode right here. And so I'm enjoying it for that. And like the dating app stuff specifically, I'm like, this feels very well written.
Yep.
One question I have, because I know that like both you and I had this problem because of this. I haven't had time to go back to it. Just like for a mini PSA for people who might pick up wavelengths. Like I thought I downloaded it, and then when I went into the game and it was like, oh, you need to purchase it, and I was like, I did. I thought I downloaded it. So what was the fix for that? Because I remember you sending it in Slack, but I didn't fully understand what it was.
Yeah, so for me, I was playing on the PlayStation 5 version of Life is Strange. When I went to download wavelengths, I clicked into the game, and then it says buy Steph's story. And so I clicked that option and I clicked download on it. And for some reason it didn't register. And I believe what the error was that it downloaded the PS4 version instead of the PS5 version. That's my assumption. What fixed it was just going to the store separately and looking up wavelengths in the store and downloading it from there.
Gotcha. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had the same problem that had the same fix where I'm like, I guess it didn't download the right version, and just kind of clicking around and like finding, like eventually you will find what it'll say just like download again, but it does give you those purchase prompts, which like I never understood why it didn't know that I bought it, but it wasn't too long. But I did get to the point where I'm like, I might have to Google this, and I don't even know how to search for this question.
Yeah. And the one thing I will say about wavelengths is the Life is Strange True Colors in general has weird frame rate. And so like, looking around, it's something I got used to pretty early on while playing. But at first I was like, oh, this is weird. Wavelengths has the same thing, but in first person, I think it stands out more, where I'm looking around my desk and I feel like it is so framey when I'm looking around the radio booth in first person. And so that's the thing that threw me off and made me kind of like not as enthused to go back to it, because I don't want to experience that game being stuttery. I want that game to be smooth. But
wait, I just realized something. Are you playing in performance mode all the time? Do you have your stuff or like fidelity mode? Are you default set to fidelity mode?
That's a good question. I forgot
because I'm default
about that
set to performance mode, and I actually, I'll be honest, I didn't have like any beefs with, and maybe I have low standards because admittedly I'm not like, I don't really care about like graphics at all, and I only notice like performance if it's like highly negative, like this is very clearly stuttering, then I'll point it out.
For me, it was pretty clear. I think I was in fidelity.
No, I didn't have any of that. I'm always in performance mode. You got to, dude, performance mode over everything.
I mean, you're right. I love performance mode. I think this is one of the ones though where the game's art style mixed with the graphics looks so good that I was kind of fine sticking with fidelity, because I was like, dude, I love how good the Haven Springs looks just outside and all the flowers, and
it still looks good in performance. But like people talk about the gap between performance mode and fidelity mode as like you're not really like seeing the true game for it's like, look, I just want it to run well, so I'm always performance, but I would recommend maybe just doing that, because I don't have any now. Again, I'm not saying that like gives the developers or the team a pass, because the game should run properly in both, and it should just be like, what do you care about being smoother, not which one do you want to work.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that that's like okay.
I think you're totally right, because usually I am the performance mode diehard. Performance mode, I'm performance squad for life, and I feel like it's been a while for me since I've actually had to check in a game. Early on in the PS5,
performance RT mode, let's go.
Oh yeah, and please put performance RT mode, more things. And early on in the PS5, I felt like that was an option that I was automatically taking in every game, where I would go in and do performance mode. I don't know why lately I've not had to think about it. Maybe my games are defaulted. Maybe I have it in my settings as default.
You might have already defaulted it, because I don't think they ask me anymore either, but that's because I went into the settings and I defaulted to performance mode, and I defaulted to like, I think normal difficulty or something. So yeah.
But yeah, Wavelengths, I've been enjoying it. The other thing I've been playing, which I don't want to talk too much about because I really want to talk with Andy about this game, is Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl.
Okay, that's all good.
But
It's fine. I didn't want to talk to you about it anyway.
It's because he's
No,
played
it's
a lot
go
as well.
Go
Well,
ahead.
no, I do want to give a quick thing for people who like might not listen to Gamescast. I really like Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl. It is the thing I'll say about it is what you expect it to be. It is generic Smash. It is not nearly the like budget value of Smash. It is way more stripped down. There's not items. There's no voice acting, which has been the big complaint. And the thing that I will say is the weirdest.
All I need to know is how many music tracks are in it and how many are actually licensed music.
You know what? That's a good question. It's not what you want, Barrett, is what I'll say. It doesn't have like themes. It doesn't have like the songs that you know from the shows. What I will say it does have is a few remixes that made me go, why is this so fire? There's one specific remix, and I think it's Ah Real Monsters. There's a remix track on the Ah Real Monsters level that is fucking phenomenal. Every time I go down level, I have to pause for a second and just listen to it.
I'm impressed because the one of the things that I was going to be convinced of, like, right, because they had said that there would be no voice acting or any of this in this game, which didn't surprise me because of the kart racer that the two kart racers that they released for Nickelodeon in the last few years. No voice acting and all generic. Like almost like not copyright music, and so I'm actually impressed that there's any in this game.
Yeah, I think it does have a lot of the generic stuff because I couldn't really put together where certain songs were from. But it does have a lot of that energy that you're talking about in terms of like the genericness of it. What I will say it does have is really good fighting. I'm surprised by how much I enjoyed playing this game because of course I got the game on Monday. Tuesday was the tournament last week where me and Andy were doing the Nick Invitational thing thrown by Panda Global where we went up against a bunch of other YouTube and Twitch personalities. And so I spent the hours before that, the night before, in the morning of, training up and trying to get really good with Toph from Avatar: The Last Airbender. And I had a really good time. The way that Andy was describing it, because we talked about it on one of the KFGD post shows, Andy mentioned that it reminded him of playing like a way more stripped down, easier Smash in terms of it doesn't have a billion characters, it doesn't have a billion items. There's not like a bunch of meta shit you kind of have to like figure out and understand. The game is fairly simple, and because of that, for me, it reminds me a lot of playing Smash 64, of not having to worry about all this extracurricular stuff. It is stripped down, and because of that, I think it's easier to kind of keep up with what's happening on screen and keep up with the characters and the matchups and all that stuff and the movesets. And I like that a lot. Playing this game in a tournament fashion with quite a few fighting game community folks as well, I was surprised by how well they took to it. The way they were talking about this game didn't feel like they were talking about it in terms of, oh, it's a Smash clone or it's generic or it's a bad game. They were talking about it in serious terms of having tier lists and Cat Dong being S tier and like them comparing all the characters and comparing like mechanics and talking about how the air dash is essential to know and talking about how much easier wave dashing is in this game and all like the actual technical mechanics of the teching and all those things were more so the focus than the this is a bullshit Nintendo or Nickelodeon game, which is a thing that surprised me. And playing it again, like I'm pretty surprised by how fun it is. Far from perfect. It is janky in a lot of ways. I always feel like the registering for my moves doesn't always feel one for one the way I want it to be. But I don't know. I've been having a good time with it. I think IGN give it like a 7, and I'll probably be in that 6.5 range if I had to give a number to it, which is pretty much around and maybe slightly above what I wanted it to be, what I expected it to be, because I was expecting some trash. I was expecting some trash for me to jump into and be like, I'm playing it knowing it's trash, and I'm just here to have nostalgia with my Nickelodeon characters. The fact that I'm having fun with it is way higher than I expected. So it's a pretty fun game. It costs a lot for what it is, I will say. It's $50. $50 is more than I would spend for this game. I would say $30 is way more along the lines of what I would feel is appropriate, but you know, money means something different for everybody. So if $50 sounds fun for what I just described, go for it because it is a fun game.
This might be too tall of an order because I'm not sure the breadth of the fighting games you play. Because as you mentioned, this is maybe like on the somewhat lower end, but it's not trash or anything. It's like pretty solid. Is there like a comparison point you can give in terms of quality? Like, oh, it's better than this game, but like not quite as good as this one. Like again, that might be really specific. So I don't know if you can even do that, but that's what I'm kind of curious of. Like when you say it's solid or okay or like surprisingly like better than you thought it would be? Like where does it when I think of all the other Smash clones, you know?
I mean, on
similar
Smash
games.
Well, Smash clones are very few and far between and always usually trash. And so, in terms of Smash clones, this is a good Smash clone. This is like a fairly good Smash clone. In terms of fighting games, it is way on the lower end in terms of what I would compare. I wouldn't compare this to anything that I consider like a good fighting game. I wouldn't compare it to any Mortal Kombat. Well, I wouldn't compare it to any good Mortal Kombat. I wouldn't compare it to any Street Fighter. I wouldn't compare it to any Tekken. I wouldn't compare it to any Arc System Works games. Like this is a thing to satiate folks who are fans of Melee and folks who are really into Smash Brothers that just want like an alternative that they can have fun with. That isn't as good as Smash Brothers, but something that gets the job done. Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl, I would say gets the job done. And it is something that I'm sure plenty of people are going to play for a week, have the fun, have that week long of fun, and go, cool, now it's back to Smash. And I think for a lot of people that's going to be good enough. We'll see how long it lasts. I don't expect it to last long though. But yeah, I couldn't compare it to any. I guess PlayStation All-Star Battle Royale would be the other thing to compare it to, but I didn't play much PlayStation All-Star Battle Royale because I just didn't like it. And I would say that this is better just off the fact that this sticks closer to the Smash rules. They're not adding in random bullshit in terms of like taking lives away from other players or depleting an HP meter. It's straight up Smash in terms of rule set and in terms of how you play it. And I think for that, I would put it above PlayStation All-Star Battle Royale, but not by much either. Okay. PlayStation All-Star, I would say has better budget and better production value to it. But again, I'm legitimately impressed by how decent this game is, and so I'm gonna take that as a rare W. I'm taking it as a rare W, everybody.
Nice.
Janet, we got one more segment before we get out of here. This segment I introduced quite a few episodes ago when I was hosting, and I want to reintroduce it. It's building the list. Of course, somebody wrote in. They were like, "Hey, whenever I go on the PlayStation Store for sales, I wish I had a better idea of what I can obtain." And Janet, there are plenty of games that are low key or indie games in general that we can highlight and talk about. And so I want to put together a list of 100 games. Right now we have 2 games because it was just me and you last time that made submissions for building the list. The 2 games we have on there are Superliminal and The Witness.
A strong start.
A strong start. Of course, we're trying to build a list of 100. Janet, I'm going to start with you. What is your submission for this week's building the list?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the short hike, which I believe I've talked about on here before. And I'm going to try to dig deeper, too, and look for like the ones y'all are less likely to hear about. Because admittedly, Superliminal, I feel like maybe some people didn't know about it. But a short hike, I think it kind of fits in that nice in between where you may have heard it, but you may not have. It's basically an adventure game. It has platforming elements. Super cute art style. A fairly short game to play as well. I believe you can finish it in, I think, definitely under 4 hours, maybe even close to 2.
Oh, yeah.
It's a fairly brief game, and the music's incredible. The atmosphere is great, and what's nice about it is it has that thing of really rewarding exploration, and you kind of never really know what you're going to find as you get to know like this area. The idea is to hike up this kind of mountainside, but to get up there, you need like certain kinds of stamina, or like through like feathers, or like you need to be able to like climb high enough. So you're sort of somewhat forced to go through some of these side things, but you also just get incentivized by them being like interesting and fun and kind of connecting to each other. So you'll like go across the beach and someone will be playing like a volleyball type game that, they're showing on screen right now, or you're like playing with these sticks and like that's a little bit fun. And then you can like fish in this game. So it has a surprising depth to it in terms of just the different sim elements that are incorporated, and they all tie back into your ultimate progression while also having you get to know like these other characters and these sort of side stories. And it's just super fun. It is honestly one of my favorites kind of ever, which sounds extreme, but I probably would set that maybe even potentially in like a top 100 for me, just because I think it's so special and so fun and joyous. It's something that I didn't play until I think about like a year ago, or I played sometime this year, and it came to PlayStation fairly recently. So if you're down for adventure stuff, I think it's a must play. And then also random shout out, but this is how I played it. I played it through itch.io had that bundle for racial justice and equality a year ago, where they gave you like 1,000 games, and like no one's ever going to play through all those, but I'm playing through them on my stream, and that's how I found the game. So just in case you for some reason you don't mind playing on PC, or you have a PC and you're looking to, if you're if we're thinking of this list in terms of someone shopping sales and looking for those hidden gems at a deal, you may already actually own this. So that's a place that you can play it as well.
Hell
And
yeah.
it's on Switch, I think, too, and other platforms. But yeah, great game.
Yeah, it's a really cozy game. I love Shore Hike as well, and it's one that as I was playing it, the way I contextualized it in my head was as like if like 3D Mario ever had like a weird innovation, like I would like this. This to me strikes me as a really good level in a weird 3D Mario game that just never existed, where you are going through the level, you are leveling, you are building up like your one ability, which I believe is like your glide ability, and you are meeting weird characters, and you're in a very quirky world. It has like a lot of like that Nintendo charm to it, even though it's not a Nintendo game. And it has like weirdly, it's like a Mario mixed with Breath of the Wild a little bit, in
Yeah,
like a
it has
very
like
small form.
the personality, even though I actually did not like this game. So like if you didn't like this game either, don't think, oh my God, I'm gonna hate Short Hike. But it kind of does remind me of like the fun parts of Link's Awakening, where there's that charm of the townspeople and the quests that connect. But the reason I say it's not exactly like it is because I found the connective quest threads of Link's Awakening to be a little bit intensive in terms of making sure you connect those dots without a guide.
They were definitely like point and click adventure type of like puzzles of like, all right, I gotta go find an obscure fisherman somewhere in the middle of this map.
Yes, and they're like linked really far in. Like Link's Awakening has like questline chains that are like 6 steps, while this one it's like 2, maybe 3, where it's like, oh, I found a shovel. Oh, now I can use that to like dig up this one spot, or now I can use this to like buy this other item. So the through lines are a lot clearer, but the heart is just as enticing as like what you get in something like Link's Awakening.
My submission for building the list is Undertale. A surprise to no one that I really love this game because I've talked about it all the time. But Undertale, of course, RPG made by Toby Fox. You go through in Earthbound style, Moon and RPG adventure style world that is filled with quirky characters and weird monsters, and the whole like the big overall gimmick of the game is that you don't have to kill anybody. You can go through and you can find solutions to spare every single monster that you come into contact with in battle, and usually that ends up being some kind of puzzle that you have to solve. And it's a really fun game for that. It's a really fun game for the writing. It's a really fun game for the heart, and it's one that I can't recommend enough. And I would say is for me a must-play video game especially if you are into these types of interesting RPGs with quirky dialogue and like a different kind of aesthetic.
I have a quick question for Undertale.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if someone's playing this for the first time and they don't know much about it, they just know, it's a really beloved like indie game, like a really cool like story. How should they go about playing it? Should they play just kind of naturally? Like there's the like genocide run or like the pacifist run. And I say this because I went into it really trying to play a specific way, and I think it maybe hurt my experience of the game. So what's your recommendation for people sort of going in cold to this?
So there are 3 runs you can do, right? There's neutral, pacifist, and genocide. And like genocide, which is a very harsh term for it, the more I think about it.
I was literally, I've been thinking about that for a while. I'm like, maybe we should come up with something else.
Maybe we should rename the genocide run. But that is where you go through and you legitimately like decimate every single character that you can in the game. And that's like a whole thing. That should be your last playthrough if you're gonna do that one.
I think no matter what though, your first playthrough is always gonna end on the neutral run ending. Like,
no, I don't think that's. Oh wait, for genocide or
no, for your first playthrough of Undertale, I think like almost unless you're doing.
I don't think so. I don't think the pacifist has a different.
You can't. I don't think you can get the pacifist ending on your pure first playthrough of Undertale. I'm gonna be honest there.
Really?
I believe so. I could be wrong, but I would say like either way, moot point. I would say like first run, I would encourage just like doing neutral, and that's like how I played it the first time around. Where like like characters that gave me bad vibes, I took them out, and like characters where I was like, oh, I actually like want to like spare the life of this this dog in knight armor kind of stuff, right? Like I would encourage doing like the kind of not worrying about playing a specific way the first time around, and then if you want to after that like first playthrough. Go like the pacifist route after that.
So I believe you can do the pacifist, the first one, because when I originally played Undertale, I played on PC, and that was a neutral run that I did. And then I played on PS4 when it came to PlayStation, and that's when I finally did the pacifist run. That was on my first playthrough, so I think on that console. So I think that can work out.
Game Guy Grover in the chat says he's right. It'll end neutral no matter what on the first run. I'm pretty sure you gotta play it once before you get to a certain ending.
I don't think that's accurate. I'm pretty sure I played it
I
pacifist.
think you are the one who was wrong.
KindaFunny.com/you're wrong.
Yeah, whatever.
I mean, people are gonna listen to this and they're gonna be like, "No, Blessing's right." But
right,
either way,
As usual.
Either way, if you can, I would say pacifist would be the way to go because I think neutral and pacifist are fairly.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. I tried doing pacifist my first time playing. Also, Game Guy says that they'll double check really quick. Literally just plays the whole game in the next 5 minutes thing. I tried doing pacifist my first time and I was using a guide for it. I was basically just playing it because I was assigned the Deltarune guide. So I was like, okay, let me play Undertale so I can do the one page on the connection between the two. The TLDR is I followed most of the guide, but I missed one really essential item that you get at the beginning of the game if you want to buy it, but I didn't buy it. And then when I got to that point where they're like, and then hand this item off, I'm like, oh, I don't have it. And playing through it without, it's basically an item where you can skip the battle. Trying to play through that bullet hell sequence without that, just straight up in the pacifist run is so hard that I just wasn't able to do it. So that's my thing with progressing. And then also I felt like, it's funny because I asked you what you should do, but then I have my own bias. So I'm just kind of more explaining my experience with trying to do the pacifist run.
Well, I mean, my reasoning my reasoning for the pacifist run is that it has all the stuff that you have in the neutral run and then more content. You get way more content after the fact. And Barrett showed the answer for what we're talking about. And I think what we're doing is we're conflating two things because basically these aren't spoilers. The pacifist run and the neutral run are the same up to a point. But if you finish the pacifist run where the neutral run ends, then you pick up and you continue
on your first playthrough.
Run.
You can choose to do the pacifist run, but at the ending of the game, you can go back and you don't have to replay the entire thing again. You just have to go do certain things.
Whereas if you do the neutral run first, you will have to replay.
So
the game
were
as the
both
pacifist run
in a way.
I'm gonna go ahead and say I was right, but yeah, continue.
All right, Janet, I know what you're saying. I think it's that spider enemy, correct? Yeah, that's a tough one.
That is the hardest one.
I felt some type of way. I was like, I really messed up. And then I just honestly, I watched the rest of it on YouTube.
Shout out really quick to the PlayStation version, which has a very simple trophy list, I would say. So if you
platinum.
If you want a platinum, there you go.
Great and easy platinum. Everybody who's interested in playing Undertale, but
technically don't even have to beat it. You just have to get to the last checkpoint.
Yeah, if you want an easy platinum or a quick platinum, Undertale, go play that game. It's also a good game, and so go do it. We got one more audience submission for building the list. Alec Bobker writes in and says, Moonlighter is my hidden gem indie. That game is such a fun dungeon crawler, but the fun twist is that the items you get from dungeon crawling are what you sell in your shop during the day. So yes, this game is in part dungeon crawler, part shop management sim, and it nails the gameplay of both perfectly. To be honest though, this is a perfect Switch game. We're in a PlayStation podcast. Alec Bobker, what are you doing? I shouldn't have read the whole thing. And it's on Game Pass. Oh my God. Alec Bobker, what are you doing? It just gets worse.
Except PlayStation.
He's also runs really well on PC. But it is almost always on sale on PSN. There we go. So go pick it up because this is one you don't want to miss. Thank you for that submission, Alec Bobko. As of now, the list for building the list goes Superliminal, The Witness, A Short Hike, Undertale, and Moonlighter. A great start. Remember, you can write into patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames if you want to be able to write in with your suggestions for building the list. We're going to go up until we hit 100. How long is that going to take? Probably a while, because what's going to happen is I'm going to try my best to do this segment. We're going to have episodes where the talk of the show is going to get too long, and I want to kick it, and then eventually.
I don't know why you're morphing into Greg's cadence right now, because that's exactly how Greg rants when he's feeling pressed. He has. Where he gets really quick, and then he gets really also
way
intensive.
Too much time together. That's what
it's really punctuated.
I've listened to Greg on podcasts for Jesus Christ, almost a decade. Holy fuck.
Also, I think Greg also likes Moonlighter, so this is probably just Greg's pseudonym for writing it.
Greg is actually Alec Bobko. That would be a twist. That would be a Fight Club style. Oh my God, I can't believe it was me the whole time. More spoilers.
Fight Club.
A lot of spoilers this episode. But you know what we can't spoil? Where you can find Janet's work. Janet, where can people find your work?
Yeah, you can find me under the handle GameOnysus. That's GameOnysus on Twitter and Twitch are some of the best places to go. And then I do want to shout out that, a while ago we were talking about my Game Her Awards nomination. And thank you for everyone who voted for me because I did make it to the finals for one of the categories I was nominated for, Rising Star Streamer. So I have that as a pinned tweet. It would mean a lot to me if y'all would go and cast that vote. You just need to put in your email. I don't think they ever really email you, So yeah, if y'all could do that, that would mean a lot. But those are my plugs, and also, shout to the spoilercast you did with me, as well as some other people for the on MinMax channel, because that one was super fun to do, and a lot of people took really positively to it. So if you were like, I'm so sad that Blessing wasn't on the PS I Love You spoiler cast, you can go and get your fix there. There's a hilarious segment in which Blessing absolutely has like the worst beef with like that old woman from the game, and it's so funny. So go check that out.
Yeah, because she was a traitor. Like she was the fucking
Dude, I get you. But
I
like
helped her
that,
out.
I also
but that
love-
on
yeah,
the level
Barrett's
of like
salt-
the
the salt is
entire
so
town.
good.
The entire town betrayed me.
Oh
Blessing.
yeah, no, I feel you on that too, because I'm not. The spoiler cast.
No
so I can
spoilers,
say
because
that.
yeah,
No
yes,
spoilers.
but
No spoilers.
if you want to see Barrett be bitter, you're gonna come through to the PS I Love You cast. Then get ready for Blessing's bitterness. That's on MinMax. But yeah, super fun conversations all around. So definitely check those out.
Hell yeah. And also to vote for Janet in the Gamer Awards, you can go thegamehers .com/vote. I was gonna say at Twitter. Thegamehers.com/vote. Go vote for Janet. Let's get her this thing. As a reminder, hashtag PS I Love Photo Mode is still Kana Bridget Spirit, so get those submissions in. Remember, this has been PS I Love You XOXO, your PlayStation podcast. Each and every week we get together to talk about the hottest topics in PlayStation. We've got a Patreon post show for those that are subbed at the silver level of patreon.com/KindaFunny Games. So stick around for that. Otherwise, until next time, peace out.